What is up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of AOS Trash Pandas. I'm your host, Rob, and with me, as usual, is my co-host, Carson. How's it going, Carson?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a busy day. It's been okay. But more importantly than that, we've got a special guest with us this week. Very special guest. We've got Mechrat, also known as Keegan. How's it going, Keegan?
It's going awesome. I'm happy to be here.
We're super glad to have you. So, Mechrat or Keegan, what should I call you, by the way?
Just call me Keegan. Keegan's
Keegan.
fine.
Okay, cool. So Keegan has a YouTube channel. It is youtube.com/ I know we just went over this, Mechrat AOS, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
I think Mechrat's my name. The handle is Mechrat AOS.
That's cool. Okay, awesome. I think I've definitely like spoofed you in the past. You did a couple of very good, you're doing like Skaven content essentially, and which I approve of, obviously. And even though we didn't totally agree on your tier list, of course, that's always going to be something that, right, that like, people don't always totally agree on. Like, it'd be weird if we totally agreed on everything, right?
Oh, and I'm not correct with my opinions. They're just opinions.
Well, and that's kind of why people are probably like, why are you doing this now? I did not like, wanted to put out more Skaven content, but just with Skaven, I'm worried about getting things like wrong. You know what I mean? And like calling things wrong. And I was just like, I'm going to let this marinate. I need more games in, more games in to like really figure out how I feel about it. And so I've now got I've got enough games in now where I feel like I can call some shots, and I'll still probably be wrong. But it'll be fun. It'll be a fun debate. And we can kind of talk about and like, and I'm assuming you kind of remember your tier list. I remember your tier list okay, but yeah, I'll be curious to see like if your opinions changed on stuff, and maybe we'll go through it. It's going to be like it's going to be a more succinct show tonight. So, and with that in mind, we'll quickly go over the rumor engine, and then I think we're going to pretty much get into it. Did you guys check out the rumor engine this week?
Yes.
I actually didn't, so live reaction from me.
Nice. Yeah, it's up there now. I think it's like maybe like a clip for like a 40k orc like gun. It looks kind of crude. You know what I mean?
It looks pretty crude, but I feel like if it was like an orc gun, it would be chipped paint and like dented and stuff like that. Like,
oh, yeah, that's true.
It's definitely 40k or at the very least, it's not AOS. And therefore,
Right.
I do not care.
That's true.
Get it out of my sight.
Yeah, get this
Disgusting.
like low tier technology. Like the Skaven are way more advanced, than
We have the best technology.
Exactly. And if, some underlings die in the process, who cares? They shouldn't have been standing there,
Yeah. It looks like if you were to hit someone with this, they wouldn't even die. Like,
yeah, exactly.
What's the point?
Yeah, like they'd die, but they sure wouldn't die. So
No, definitely not.
They wouldn't die.
yeah. 0 out of 10 interests, says Stark. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Yeah, we're gonna have a fun kind of show. Oh, and before we get on to some ratty goodness, there is Kippers Malay is a tournament on Vancouver Island. It's hosted by our own Andy, who is unfortunately sick right now. So get better, Andy. I think he's already on the mend, but yeah, they have a golden ticket, and to be honest, like it's one of the better events to go to get a golden ticket, because like a lot of like the most competitive people that I know that normally go aren't able to make it this year. Although Matt Beasley's going, so good luck to whoever.
So
I know, I'm not saying it's free. Like if any tournament that he goes to is like extremely scary. Like he's one of the best players I've ever met. But I'm just saying, like, maybe someone else knocks him out and it's a good matchup for you. Like, I'm just saying you got a better chance going to Kippers than you normally would, because this year it's not quite so infested with sharks. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
That's true. It's also a best overall golden ticket, not a best general. So
Oh,
you could even 4-1. You could lose to Mr. Beasley, and if you have an amazingly painted army, then still got a good shot at it.
that's true. And he already has a golden ticket, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So it would.
I think he has like 3 or 4.
How many do you have, Carson?
4.
4. God dang it! I thought you only had 3. Jesus.
No, I thought it was 3, and then apparently the North America Masters team got tickets. But
crazy!
Mine just fizzles, I guess, because I already had one. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Whatever. Are you going to Worlds, Mechrat? I never got a chance to ask you.
I didn't focus on it this year. I was too consumed with Masters. I thought about going to Worlds, and I thought about like trying to sweat really hard and go to some events, but I went last year. It was fun. It wasn't realistic for me to go this year, so I didn't fight for it.
Well, and it's a big financial commitment too, and like if you some tournaments have like financial support for that kind of stuff for going to Worlds, and some don't, and so that's a huge factor as well. Oh, by the way, the last thing I'll say before we get into this is the reason that I've got my beard cut like this is not because I'm some kind of hipster now. It's because I went as Wolverine to a mutual friend's Halloween party. Carson can verify. And I'm going
I don't know what he's talking about.
Shut up, you! I knew you were going to say that. And I'm going to another one this weekend. So I'm keeping it until I am Logan no longer. Okay. Feel free to tell me how dumb I look in the comment section. Moving right along. So Skaven has been out for a while, right? Where did the PDF thing? Oh, there it goes. Okay. So what do you guys think overall of the book?
I think it's probably deeper and better than most people are giving it credit for. But obviously we've got one of the best shooting units in the game right now, and it's going to skew all of our lists for the next few months. And we're probably going to be like a popular army in teams and a top tier army for a little while until they get rattling guns under control. But I think the book as a whole is solid.
Carson?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that a lot of people were a little bit put off by the fact that it was like quite similar to the index. There are some key changes, of course, and some units added, which is a big thing. But I'm curious to see where it's going to end up after like the first like points adjustment that does touch like rattling guns and all of the scaries in the book, just because like it's very much so you see like the big the lists that are doing well right now. And it's just like 18 rattling guns. That's my start. And you're like, like,
yeah,
we're kind of getting the same sort of spam effect that we were at the start of the edition. So I'd imagine they're going to, adjust that a bit.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel kind of similar. Like Skaven is usually never in the worst spot. Like even like before in 3rd edition, there was a point where we had the lowest win rate in the game, but the book is deep enough that there's usually something you can grab onto. I do think it's a very difficult book to play compared to most of the other indexes that are out right now, but my main concern is that like rattlings are super good, right? Super duper good. But the problem is that like I'm never going to be the person who buys a crazy amount of rattling guns because like I'm not going to tournaments. And so when they inevitably make them, fair, or maybe they even overprice them, like what happened to Goblins last edition, where they're just like, oh shoot, and then they just kind of keep increasing it to the point where they're not really feasible anymore. I'm hoping that they bring other things down. Like there's some stuff in this book that is crazy overpointed. In fact, I think actually most of it is actually quite overpointed. But the nice thing and the enticing thing for me is that they're like, I can see a use for pretty much everything. It's just got to fit the right price. There's a couple war scrolls where I'm like, you kind of effed up here. You know what I mean? But we'll go over that. Okay. We'll go into the, we'll do a quick review because nothing has changed really other than Clan Pestilence in terms of, or I guess some of the spells have switched around for what is the infinite spell. And anyway, we'll kind of go over the changes. We'll go over the basics, and then I think what we'll do is like maybe we'll just talk about, because the book is so deep. I don't want to take up too much time, but I want to like hit on the things that are important. So maybe what we'll do is we'll talk about the things that we think are good, bad, and also just stuff that we want to hit on. Like, I don't have anything to say about the Verminlord Corruptor as an example, but if you guys do, we can talk about it. You know what I mean? But I know, like, me and Mechrat definitely want to talk about the Deceiver. I want to talk about the Warp Seer, that kind of stuff, right? So, cool. If we're down for that, should we?
Yep.
Okay.
Good to me.
Matt says, poor Stormfiends, I want to love you. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I like them, and I like them way more than last edition, but we'll get into that in a minute. I do have something to say about them. Faction rules. So we've got, of course, the main rules to go over super quick. The Lurking Vermintide is basically you can set them up in Deep Strike, and then you can bring them out near a Gnawhole. Not too much to say there, and that hasn't changed. And then what are the only other important things to talk about? I mean, the most interesting thing in the entire like faction rules is, of course, 3 claw steps ahead. I think this rule is incredibly powerful. I think that I see a lot of people poo-pooing it, and I think it's like the most I really do. I mean, like, granted, a lot of the time, when I say these things, like, I'm everywhere. I'm on WhatsApp Skaven. I'm in the Discord Skaven. I'm on Facebook Skaven. So there's a variety of levels of play when you're online. You know what I mean? But no, I've been saying this since the start. It's a really cool rule. We lost a lot of the like extra movement on clan rats when you're running and doing things like that. And we can't retreat and charge clan rats either anymore, can we? Yeah, that's crazy. Like, it just doesn't even occur to me that that's not still there. We don't take mortal wounds, of course, when we do, if we're infantry or cavalry. The cavalry keyword is kind of silly to me.
We have one war scroll that's cavalry.
One war scroll, and it's a hero, by the way. So, yeah. And it's not great, but we'll get to that in a minute. And then I think, is there anything else that I'm forgetting to hit on? And then you can bring out Gnawholes. It's part of our, rule. You get one at the start in setup, and then at the start of every battle round. So at the start of battle round 1, you should have 2 Gnawholes. It's something that a lot of people kind of get mixed up. Actually, yeah. Why don't we talk about them real quick? I'm not sure that I took a picture of them when I made this PDF. I think it's in there, but I was doing it real quick because I had a bunch of stuff to do today.
You did. It's page 30.
Oh, is it? Sick. Excuse me.
Go.
But it is kind of like, while we're talking about it, so the splinters of Vermin Doom, you can use this ability if there are fewer than 3 Gnawholes. Set up a Gnawhole on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from all enemy units, more than 1 from all friendly units, and more than 3 inches from all objectives and other terrain features. Where do you like to put your first Gnawhole, Keegan?
Like the Gnawhole that I start with, or the first? The Gnawhole I start with, I usually just put in the back line, just behind my troops, just because I it depends on where I put my second Gnawhole more, like, because I want the first one in my back line, and then the second one usually goes on out to the left or right side, so I can send troops from the back to the sides or do shenanigans or whatever. But usually the first one is just kind of a no-brainer, right in the back. If I'm on an objective that's like 6, if I'm on a mission that's 6 objectives, I'll usually put it in the back in between 2 of the objectives, so I can jump to either of them in the mid or late game once I've spread out a little bit more. Right. But usually it just goes in the back line.
That's pretty much what I like to do too, almost verbatim. And that really hasn't changed since AOS 2 or 3, actually. But my deployment on the second one has. I personally, so similar to you, I like to do that. But the second one, it depends on what my opponent has deployed. but I will usually do. Most of the time, my opponent deploys in a way where I can't get another one in their back line. You know what I mean? And I don't like to put it on the sides because I often find myself deploying on the sides to go for what's it called? Take the flanks.
Flanks. Yeah.
But and then it because it can be used to get toward me. So if I'm lucky, I usually will put it in the, like if they deploy in such a way where I can plunk one down in the back line, I really like to do that just to have a threat that I can teleport into their back line or bring units back there, or it's just something for them to worry about. It's just something for them to think about, because like the first one is where you're going from, and it's also like the one you want to protect because you always want to have one to bring units back. But I often find that I don't get that chance, so I usually have two like sort of in my deployment zone, and then the third one I'm hoping for later in the game to kind of poop out in the back. But yeah, Carson, any thoughts before we?
On the actual placement of them, no.
Yeah,
I
fair
will
enough.
say that. So this is pretty much the same as what it was in the index, as far as like how you can set them up. And I will say that it seems like quite limited by, or it seems quite at the mercy of like the terrain at your local tournament, essentially.
Yeah.
I had an unfortunate moment.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, at Masters, I was playing against a Skaven player with my last game, and there was just this one long piece of terrain where I was just like, I kind of figured out, it's like, okay, if I just put two units like this, you can I don't even think there was a valid place for him to put a Gnawhole at the end of the game, and I was like, ew, like that doesn't seem good.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's one thing that you have to be careful of. It's just making sure, like doing some pre-measuring before the game to see like what are my valid spots without any units whatsoever. So yeah, that's the only thing.
That's a great tip about the pre-measuring. I don't, do that enough. But yeah, good call. Anything you wanted to add, Mechrat, before we move on?
I would just say something that I see a lot of newer Skaven players do is they get really tempted to place Gnawholes super aggressively and they want to teleport units through them and go for charges and go for alphas and stuff like that. And I would say 9 times out of 10, unless you've completely designed your list around that, it's gonna backfire because opponents can charge terrain features now, and the Gnawhole has a pretty big footprint. So that, and then also keeping in mind for your back line, if you put a Gnawhole in your back and you rush your entire front line and all your troops forward turn 1 and you're playing against somebody with teleports, they can teleport something to your back line and then like charge the Gnawhole to get to your back line because they'll be outside of 9 of your troops, but they might be only like 3 inches away from your Gnawhole. So I always leave at least 1 unit or an endless spell with a move characteristic next to my backline Gnawhole if I'm pushing forward, just to prevent that from happening, because it can happen a lot. It's really easy to charge Gnawholes.
Yep, absolutely. That's kind of what I was touching on before as well in terms of placement. Yeah, and I totally agree. I've tried that. Like I've tried doing the aggressive stuff, and it's never worked out for me. But like at the start of the edition too, we weren't used to having chargeable endless spells and chargeable terrain features, so it's gonna it takes some time to get used to it. But yeah. Oh, by the way, if anyone has any questions for Keegan or for anyone, in terms of any of the stuff we're talking about, obviously, please feel free to drop it in the chat. So next we have battle formations. We've got Warp Cog, we've got Flesh Meld Menagerie, we've got Virulent Procession, and Claw Horde. The only thing that's changed is Virulent Procession, and okay. So I'm not a Pestilence guy, right? Like I like them more than I did before, right? But did they kill this subfaction, Keegan? I know you were running them. Okay, yes, they did.
Yep, they completely killed it. Do not run this anymore. They made it
fair.
garbage compared to what it used to be.
And like okay, but and this is a question, and feel free to answer this however you want. Do you think that they made the right decision? Like, do you think that they should have killed it?
Yeah, it was. I think it was too strong. I think what made it too strong was that you could summon out of Gnawholes and then move to tie stuff up, which just made certain matchups like Slaves and Gargants, where they just 100% rely on getting in combat with you. Like it made it so bad for the opponent. It was basically impossible to play around because it turned every Gnawhole into a 12-inch tar pit.
Right.
So like I think they made the right decision in nerfing it. I am sad to see it go, but it probably did need to be changed.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't. I feel like they could have or should have done something to make up for it. Like instead of it being pick 3, it could have just been like any. It could have been like the. It could be basically like the Saurus one for Seraphon, where it's just like at the end, if you're a Croxagore or you're a Saurus, pile in and do some mortal wounds. Like there, or is theirs pick 3 too? It's funny how it's like theirs might be. I'm
I
not
don't
sure.
remember.
Yeah. Anyway, but like, okay. Well, moving on from there, which one is your favorite? I'm guessing it's now it's a warp
I
cog.
think my
Apparently.
favorite is Prize Creation or Fleshmeld
Yes.
Menagerie because I'm a
Yes.
Molder guy, but the best one is
Nice.
Warpcog, and it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It's like Warpcog is as long as Rattling Guns are good, Warpcog is going to be the best one.
I agree. It sucks. I've actually run more Fleshmeld Menagerie than I have anything else. Um, Despite the fact that I never roll the 5 up, it's like half the time I'm rolling like mortal wounds on myself, but it's so cool. It like reminds me of Total War. You know what I mean? And we'll get to Thanquol's Menagerie as well, which is even more like that. It's just unfortunately it's bad and like you're never gonna see it, which sucks. But I like the theme. I like the fluff and the feel of it. But okay, well, why don't we go into Warp Cog first? Yeah, you just pick up to three friendly Scryer units to be the targets, and then roll a dice for each target. On 1, you can inflict D3 mortal damage. On a 2, 3, or 5, add 1 to wound rolls for the target's shooting attacks for the rest of the turn. So that's just your turn. It doesn't go on to the next one. So like when it's not your turn, if you're doing like Overwatch or not Overwatch, but covering fire. Anyway, and then 6 is in addition to the +1, you get an additional pip of rend. Yeah, I think I've rolled that like once. It's crazy, but I'm actually pretty successful lately on not rolling the D3 mortal wounds. So yeah, I mean, I'll take that all day, to be honest. Yeah. So, yeah, this is really, really good with your rattling guns. Basically, like anything from the warp spark battery, like this is pretty awesome with because your warp fire throwers are hitting on 2s already, so they're going to be 2s and 3s, and then your actually, that's the same thing for the Scourgers as well. They're going to be 2s and 3s, and then sometimes even more rend. Yeah, I mean it's just really good. Okay,
Yep.
so you want to run Fleshmeld Menagerie. What is the problem with Fleshmeld Menagerie?
Basically, all of the Molder troops outside of Storm Fiends are terrible. Like both of the monsters are completely overcosted, like utterly and horrendously overcosted. Rat ogres are just outshined by doom players. I've played dozens of games with rat ogres, and I played literally 2 games with doom players, and I was like, these are just better. It's not like there's basically no reason to run rat ogres over doom players. And then storm fiends are so expensive that if you're building a whole list around like having melee storm fiends, you're running into the problem of like I have 2/3 of my army as 2 gigantic 6-inch move units that my opponent can just run away from. Or they're not even that durable for their price. It's still
No.
only like 36 wounds on a 4-up save. Nighthaunt's just going to clear it. Slaves is just going to clear. Ogres is just going to clear it. Like,
Yeah. I've the funny thing is so like I actually saw someone arguing. Actually, we'll get to the brood terror in a minute, but like I've seen lots of people argue that like some things like are super durable, like rat ogres, when you have the 5-up. But I'm like, you can't rely on the 5-up. You're just as likely to take D3 mortal wounds. Like, are you insane? Like, so, and like the problem is too is like I often roll that D3 mortal wounds so often that I feel like there's no point in rolling the D3 mortal wounds on themselves before they make attacks, because I might just lose a rat ogre and then I'm losing the same amount of attacks that I would gain anyway. But yeah,
It's a good one to make.
yeah, and oh, Jason, thank you so much. Gifted a gift membership to Peter Ladificus. I don't know if you're here or not, but we'll get there eventually. Thank you so much, Jason. That's very kind, very generous. We really appreciate you. I actually think that like the second best formation on here is Claw Horde, because I legitimately think like I think clan. I'm not saying clan rats are necessarily perfectly pointed. I'm not sure. I really don't know. I would have to run like so many that my back would just, completely give out. But like, yeah, I mean, like your clan rats all being rend 1 on the charge, and then if you take any storm vermin, they're rend 2 if they're charged or if they charge. I think the problem with storm vermin is they're just a little bit too expensive for what they are and what they do. Like you're just not getting as many wounds, you're not getting as many attacks. So if you're combining stuff with like the pestilence, what do they call it? The plague claw? Wait, the plague pack? I think it's called now.
Yeah, to get like buff prayers on them.
Yeah, to get like
Yeah,
mortal
like
wounds and stuff like that. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I do like the Verminous subfaction too, because most of the Verminous troops, like especially clan rats, are decent. Like I do like Storm Vermin. They are like blenders. They do tons of damage on the charge with buffs and stuff like that. But you're right, they are super fragile, and they're not. I don't think they're like spammable. I think Vizzik helps a little bit, but Vizzik has other problems that we'll get into later.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Right on. Yeah. Okay, it sounds like we're on the same page. Carson, sorry. I hope I'm trying to, you chime in here whenever you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm very much so deferring to the experts on this one. Like I've observed Skaven from afar, but I haven't played as them yet. So that's.
I tried to get him into the.
You got so close.
So close. I was like, I will give you warp lightning cannons, and he's just like, oh man, that's so nice, and then just nope. What happened?
And then I faded into
we have rat ogres.
I know. I
ogres. Yeah. What's the problem?
I even had like 2 Skaven tide boxes. Like I have plenty of Skaven. I just don't play.
He gave away 1 to charity. What a jerk.
I did do that.
You're a piece of crap. I think we all agree. Okay, fine.
Hey, whoa. Get me out of this.
Back me up, Skaven. Okay, so heroic. You betrayed me for the last time. Heroic traits. So we got Scurry Away, a very good one. I'm running this like almost always, to be honest, especially when you're running Warp Cog. I can see I can see Skilled Manipulator on like your Arch Warlock or someone you want to protect, because he's just like giving you free CP every other turn and that kind of thing. But I'm mostly just running the 3-up. It goes great on a Vermin Lord. It goes great on everything. But yeah, what do you guys think? Like, is there anything else? Like, obviously, add 1 to charge, run and charge rolls. That's pretty good too, But I'm just not running a combat army for the most part. And when I do, like, who are you going to send it in with? Like, I did try it once with my, with a Vermin Lord and a pack of Rat Ogres. And then I was sending them in together. But ultimately, I don't know. I just rather keep that Vermin Lord alive with a 3-up Scurry Away.
Yeah, I could see with points adjustments and like fundamental changes to the internal balance of this book, Short-Tempered becoming a pretty good option. But I think that, like you were saying, scurry away is probably the correct choice at the moment.
I like
Basically, all of our big heroes already having 5-up wards. The 4-up pass off is just you're all. It's just not that much better, and skill
No.
like short tempered is fine, but like you said, we're not really running combat armies right now. We run combat vermin lords, and a 3-up runaway is just better on a combat vermin lord than +1 to charge.
Exactly. It's so much better. And then on top of that, like the only time I could see running it is if you don't have a Vermin Lord and you're taking Thanquol and you just need like you want to take a heroic trait and you're like, okay, my local meta is, there's a lot of KO, a lot of shooting. I just want to protect him in a bubble wrap of clan rats to stop them, even the close range shooting. And then that way, with a 4-up ward, like an Arch Warlock might go quite far. Right. But yeah, I think we're on the same page. Okay. I mean, and again, this hasn't really changed since the index. None of this it's the exact same. So yeah.
No, not
really. Okay. This is more interesting though. The artifacts, I think there's a debate here. I tend to go with one in particular, but what do you guys like?
I like Foulhide the best because the Vermin Lords, most of their durability comes from avoiding combat. So they're constantly in a state of in combat and not in combat, like waffling between it. And it is because they spend, almost more time out of combat than in combat. They're having a lot of chances to heal up. And they don't have that many wounds, but they do have a ward. So that means the quality of wounds that they're healing is better. So I'm, because I generally run Vermin Lords, I generally like Foulhide. Like the D3, it adds up really quick. Especially if you toss a rally in there. So that's my favorite.
Yeah, I agree with that. Foulhide is a really good one. And it really matches the pattern of the Deceiver, just kind of like bouncing between combat, like you're saying, and then licking its wounds whenever it does get out of combat. It's quite nice. So agree.
Yeah, I like that. I think it depends on what you're running. So like if you're running the Deceiver, he's already rocking -3 rend.
Exactly.
-4 rend is like that's a do-si-do. That's just like a little extra thing that you almost never need unless you're going into trolls, and you should never put your Deceiver into trolls because he just doesn't have the output to not immediately die to their hit back. I actually don't mind the Warpstone Charm on certain things, and actually that's what I've been taking more often than not. Although as I go along, I'm seeing the Foulhide, I'm seeing the value of the Foulhide more, like you said. But the Warpstone Charm, the bad side about the Warpstone Charm is that you need a 3-up, and so sometimes it's just not going to be there for you when you need it. But then sometimes, like in my game against Pat, I sent in. Oh no, I sent in Thanquol. That's right. It was an experiment, so that didn't even apply. But if you take the Master Clan, the Warp Seer, giving him -3 rend, so you all out attack him, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, -3 rend, 3 flat damage, and he can make you fight last. So you can send him in there with a pack of Red Ogres. Then they're rocking -2 rend as well against a big target. There's like stuff there, but again, we're already, kind of saying like some of these things just aren't like the others. Like, I think it'll be more effective in a future world where the internal balance, again, it all comes back to the internal balance is so far off in this book in a lot of ways. So yeah. What about the Skaven Brew? Like, is this the thing that you take when you're running Claw Horde?
I don't think you need it. I think I think Storm Vermin already do enough damage, like really realistically. And same with Doom Players. Like and the quality is wasted on basically every other troop that's not Clan Rats or Storm Vermin because they're all like only 4 or 6 bottles. It's right. The fact that it's a once per game, just like
that's the problem.
You get to overkill your target once, then you never get to use it again.
Yeah. If this was once per battle, I would like it a lot. because you could just be throwing it onto blocks of 40 clan rats that have already been buffed by prayers and stuff like that, and they just become monsters. Like they just become like some of the hardest hitting things in the game. Of course, the mortal wound prayer is like a 5 or something like that, so you're probably charging it up for at least 2 rounds, I think. I mean, we can find out.
I think it's a
right.
4. I think the one that's a 5 is the -1 to be wounded, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, that's rabid tough, right? Yeah. And then bile torrent is 4, right? I think I misread it the other day. Okay, well we'll get there in a second. Yeah, it sounds like we're all on the same page pretty much. You guys like Foul Hide a little bit more, and I like Warpstone Charm a little bit more, but I'm kind of heading your way. So yeah, okay. Spell lore. This did change. The unlimited spell went. It used to be Wither, right? Yeah, and now it's Skitter Leap. That's better. I would prefer it was Warp Gale, if I'm being honest. I'm not doing that. I don't have that many heroes. I've got usually like 2 heroes. But okay, well, what do you guys think? Like, is this what you guys would have it as well? You like the unlimited on that?
Maybe a little too powerful.
Yeah, exactly.
Just,
well, for sure. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Like, I mean, and the thing is too, is it does go off on a 6 for Warp Gale as well. So yeah, I think that's that's a good point. I always want whatever I can get. Skitter Leap though, Skitter Leap's still very useful, especially. I think this is another thing where once the internal balance kind of changes a little bit, we're actually going to see the spell be even more useful, because like, what are you doing with it right now? Like, what's your main strategy with it right now?
One of the things that I primarily use it for is to unleash it in my opponent's turn to warp the Deceiver out of combat after he commits to killing it for a battle tactic and then giving him heartburn.
That's pretty funny. I do not have the luck to pull that off. Like, whenever I try and get off like any just kind of normal spell in my opponent's turn, the additional -1 like screws me every time. But that's I mean, I got to believe harder in the Horned Rat, I think is the ultimate point to take out of that. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great thing to do. And the nice thing about it now too is that it's no longer limited to a certain wound amount. It's always been limited to a certain wound amount. It was like 12 wounds in 2, and I think it was 13 wounds in 3. And now anyone, you can Skitter Leap a freaking Screaming Bell out of. I mean, not that you're gonna probably take it, but yeah, you can do that, right?
Well, and the other thing that I like about Skitter Leap being unlimited now, in most of my lists I run 3 heroes. I'm a 3-drop with 3 wizards, and just having like being able to Skitter Leap a hero to Skitter Leap another hero. Like, say you've got a hero that's like 30 inches away, so it's like, I need to go rescue him. You Skitter Leap one hero over there, and then you Skitter Leap the other hero, and now you get 2 chances at it, right? Because you can try with the guy who was in combat in the first place, then you can try with the guy who was just Skitter Leapt over. So it's like, or you're like, I really need this Skitter Leap to go off for take their land. Here's 3 tries at it, and I just need to roll a 6 on 66 base. Like, it's just unlimited tries at a teleport is so nice.
Yep. No, that's a good point. Yeah, very good point. What about Wither? Do you ever use Wither?
Yeah, because there are times where a hero is stuck in combat with 2 dudes or 1 dude, or I'm trying to focus something down this turn. I just a little extra D3 mortal wounds, and then Thanquol runs in there and hits with his stomp for D3. It's like we have a lot of chip damage in Skaven, so a little bit of extra chip is fine. I won't complain about it.
Yeah, agreed. My favorite is the Warp Gale. Making something strike last is so awesome, and I especially like using it with the Warp Seer, because then you can have 2 different units potentially fighting last, and you get like your own little mini High Tide from Deepkin, and that's really fun. That's really, really fun.
It's the fact that this. Go ahead, Carson.
Oh no, I was just gonna say 18-inch range is like really solid too, just because
That's
Soul
true.
Blight has a strike last spell that's only 12 inches, and even that's really powerful in that army. So it's pretty amazing to be able to countercast this as
Right.
well, because like they don't even necessarily have to be that close to you. An 18-inch range is like, maybe there's some really fast unit thing that can close that gap, but almost always your opponent's going to be within 18 inches of you when they're going to be having a go turn. So it's quite
Yeah,
nice.
that's true.
Absolutely. And the other big change was that Warp Gale went down. It's now a 6 to cast
Used to be
instead
a
of
7.
7.
Yeah.
And when you have Thanquol, just being able to get strike last off on a 6 on the dice in your opponent's turn, it has like crushed so many opponents' turns just because they were banking on sending in this one hammer, and now it's struck last. Like it's such an amazing spell to use magical intervention.
And what's interesting too is that speaking of the Soul Blight spell, that's on a 7 and it's 12 inches. So it's like worse in every possible way.
That's
I
true.
think the Soul Bite spell lasts until next turn.
Oh, is this only for the turn? Oh, okay, yes. Okay, that's a
And-
huge difference. Never mind.
And the other thing about them too is can't they like basically teleport one of their heroes? Don't they have that similar to like Seraphon?
You're talking the Vampire Lords?
Yeah.
I think that's movement phase.
Oh,
when
is
they
it
do that.
movement phase? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, things have changed obviously. Because since the last edition, I haven't played any Soul Blight this edition. Well, I mean, there you go. I guess it's a little bit of a whole other round of strike last is pretty. It's pretty valuable.
pretty huge.
So, yeah.
Never mind. I rescind my statement. Sorry.
Nice. No. I mean, we're all learning here. So now we've got prayer lore. Okay, first of all, there's one of the biggest changes to the book is we lost, or in the index we lost our foot priests, right? Yeah, and like that was a big deal to me. I was like, this effing sucks, all because like you could only build a priest on foot now by buying a screaming bell and building that guy out of there. But who cares? Like, let us have our freaking toys, or just sculpt us a new one. Do whatever it takes. Anyway, but they kind of did us one better because now we have what's essentially a hero, but not a hero, on 10 wounds. Therefore, not protected, of course, by Look Out, Sir. But you can bring them back. 10 wounds. They have a token where you can re-roll the one roll on your prayer rolls. Like, they're kind of awesome. So they're back in a big way. They're 60 points?
140, I think.
140? Wow. Yeah, it's even better than I remembered. Anyway, yeah. And then so now you get access to these really good prayers. Like, I actually think the prayers are arguably better than the spell lore. Filth Crust goes off on a 4, and you pick an infantry unit wholly within 13 inches. Add 1 to wound rolls for the target's combat attacks until the start of your next turn. In addition, if the chanting roll was an 8+, the target's melee weapons have crit mortal. So you'll need an 8 to get that, the crit mortal going on them. But very powerful. You can charge it up over time. It works well both with them, like if you're praying in your off turn, or you can be, doing stuff with what's his bucket? Vizzik Skour, who gets to pray, and we'll go into that in a second. But like, there's ways of getting up to the 8 pretty quickly. Yeah. So then we've got Bile Torrent within 13 inches. It's basically a horde killer, unless you get that 8 number again, and then it's on a 4+, which is really good. You're playing against goblins, you're playing against fellow Skaven, you're playing against whatever. Pat got it off on me on a 4+ in our game, and he just decimated a unit of 40 clan rats. It was crazy. And then you got Rabid Tough. It goes on a 5+, and then it subtract 1 from wound rolls. And then in addition, if the chanting rolls 8+, add 1 to the save rolls for the target as well. These are all really good. I think the worst one, is the Bile Torrent, just because it's situational. if you're playing against an elite army, and there's a lot of that out there right now, it's not as useful, but like it's still, it's still probably useful. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Still pretty good in that. Like if you think of like a unit of Varangard or Chosen or something like that, you're still doing like 3 to 5 mortal wounds to them if you have it charged up. It's like, I'll take
Exactly.
that. That's pretty good. Like,
Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
very solid.
Yep.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I think I think Rabid Tough is it's strange because we already have an endless spell that gives -1 to wound, and it gives it in a whole, spoilers, we'll talk about it later, but we have an endless spell that gives -1 to be wounded to infantries. So the prayer is a little bit less effective there, but it's still obviously really good. I mean, the main reason you're playing our prayer lore, in my opinion, is Filth Crust, just because so many of our troops throw buckets of dice, and crit mortals on buckets of dice is insanely good. And most of our melee troops like wound on like 5s and 4s. Rat ogres are 3s, but like most of our infantry are like 5s and 4s. So +1 to wound is super good. And because it's unlimited, you can run 2 plague packs and just spam it. So yeah, our prayer lore is definitely great. Very much made for a melee army. If you're playing shooty Skaven, you're probably not going to get much value out of our prayer lore, but that's the trade-off.
But you also you're probably going to have you should have at least one screen, probably you should have at least 2 screens, to be honest, and just -1 to wound on them. And then, cause the endless spell can be dispelled. It can be murked. It can be shot off the table. Like there's so much you can do. So, and people can't interact with our prayer lore. So I just think it's in terms of you can't unbind a prayer, right? So I think it's super good. I agree. Sorry, I haven't been keeping up with the chat as much. Let me see, make sure Fourth Passive is nice against mortals and shooting on a, yes, exactly. That's what I was saying, Matt. Let me make sure we didn't miss anything important. Have you guys been keeping up with the chat? I've been so zoned in here to the.
It was one gift sub from Jason, so thank you for that, Jason. We appreciate you very much.
Yes, that went to Peter, and Ledivicus did confirm that he is in the chat, and he did dodge another one.
Likely story?
Yes. Oh, actually, I'll wait for what you said about Storm Vermin in a minute once we get there, Ledivicus. But actually, you know what? We already talked about them a little bit. Ledivicus is saying they should have 2 wounds. And I actually agree, and some people might disagree, but our Globadiers have 2 wounds. So, obviously they would be more points, right? But that'd be so much better. I would be actually really into that.
What I just wish they would do is, I wish they would give them the grave guard, where they give the hero the 5-up ward and they also get the 5-up ward, because I think that saves Storm Vermin completely, because their biggest weakness is that they just get shot off the board.
Yep. And then you don't even need to do anything. You don't need to add, I mean, the extra wound would be cooler and kind of thematic or whatever, but putting all that aside, I think that just totally solves, and I completely agree. And I mean, it's not even just Graveguard, it's like Saurus Guard, there's actually, it's pretty common. Do Crypt Guard have that for NPC? What's that?
Iron Guts get it, I think. They get like a 6 sub, right?
Oh yeah, but it never. It's only for tyrants, and it
Oh,
got it.
Yeah, no one cares about that.
Okay.
It's I would rather the tyrant die than my Iron Guts die.
Nice statement.
But if they get the 5-up though,
yeah,
or that's
fine.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's what's funny is that Ogres is my mainline army, obviously, and I forgot that existed because it's so irrelevant.
Yeah, that's fair. Cool. And then we've got the Manifestations of Doom. I think
Girl 7s.
yeah, that is super rough, right? And didn't that change? Wasn't it a 6? No? Okay.
Sure, they've all always been 7s, and I just it hurts. It really hurts.
Well, and Warp Lightning Vortex used to be an 8, but it used to be good. So
So bad now. It's terrible. I've tried. I've really tried.
It's true. I honestly though, I kind of like taking this lore just for the bell though, just to have this -1 to wound bubble floating around. Like it's won me several games. It's made stuff like impossible for people because like like wounding on 4s is not uncommon now at all. And so if you're wounding on 5s, like you could just whiff like badly. And but yeah, 7 is rough, especially if you're trying to cast it like in your opponent's turn or something like that. Like I think now I'm not really like trying to cast it in my opponent's turn. I think I'm mostly trying to like charge up prayers in my opponent's turn because like unless you roll a 1, you're kind of just you're winning. You're just charging up prayers, so it's not like you're losing anything from it. But yeah, anything to add on terms of the okay.
I mean, I think our manifestation lore, I don't think it's the best spell lore that we can run right now, but I definitely think it's good. I think the bell by itself makes it viable for us.
That's what I would, and I just kind of like to run it too. What spell lore are you running typically? What do you think is the best?
Forbidden Power, because you can teleport rattling guns out of combat with the bridge. And Lauchen is good and durable, and shards are a good zoning tool. Like, and Horrorghast gets in the way and sometimes randomly stops commands, but it's mostly because of bridge. Like 12 rattling gun lists are really disgusting with bridge.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. I don't own it because I was gonna like make my own. Now I feel like I should just go out and grab it. All that work for nothing. Moving right along. So we're going over to the coolest model that Games Workshop has ever made, and I will die on this hill. It is such an awesome model. The model is the coolest model.
It's a very good model.
It's insane. Like the horns alone are wildly cool. So I don't know what's going on. Oh, I see. Yeah. I was like, what do you mean? Like, and then I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Vizzik
Skour to unveil all of his tricks at the first tournament so we can just absolutely step on people, and then we can unveil his secrets. That's fine.
He's melting too. Yeah.
Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, I agree with Matthew in the chat. Like, I do think Forbidden Power is a sleeper kind of thing that maybe not everyone is like. For me, it's out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. But yeah, great point for that. We've deduced half your list now, Matt. Yeah, maybe. Okay, so Vizzik Skour, 15 wounds, 10-inch move, 5 up save, 5 control, 6 attacks that do crit mortals, 4s and 2s, 1 rend, and then a nonsense attack. He's very interesting. He's got Death Frenzy over here. It's not good Death Frenzy like the old Death Frenzy, but you could do it on 2 units, and it is interesting, especially if you've got like Fight Last going on. You know what I mean? And then you go over to his and where does it say? The important thing about that is that you can pray for Death Frenzy in your opponent's turn for free. You don't need to spend a CP. It goes off on an 8, which is crazy, but you're getting that every turn for free. So it allows you to pray for that and then just basically charge up his prayers for free if you want. And then you can do other prayers. You can do all sorts of stuff. So it's pretty cool. And you could obviously do another prayer first or this prayer first and then spend a CP to do another prayer. So he's got like this really cool tech going on, right? And then he's got a really awesome ability. Once per turn, army, any combat phase on a 2-up. Everything, all the attacks have to go into him, but then he's -1 to hit and wound. And then he also has in the combat phase 2-up, do D3 mortal wounds. And then once per battle, you can re-roll the chanting rolls for this unit until the start of your next turn. So that would be in the off turn too. So that's very interesting. I wish it wasn't once per battle. I wish it was just like once per turn or something like that. Like you could re-roll. That would make him a lot more interesting. So it's like, this guy is super interesting. He's techie. He's cool. Why is he so bad? Right? I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to let Mechrat or Keegan answer it, you know.
2 things. He costs 450 points, and he has a 5-up save.
That's it.
And that's it. And that's all it needs to be. The 5-up save just kills him. Dead on arrival. He dies instantly to long strikes.
Yeah, he dies to long strikes. He dies to like any reasonable shooting. He does have a 5-up ward, but with a 5-up save, it means that's basically all he has. It's like a 5-up ethereal save, and that's crap. Like, just ask Chainrasp Horde. Yeah, it sucks. Okay. And I hate that he has a 5-up save, because it becomes a race to the bottom. It becomes Screaming Bells last edition, where it's just like, how far do we have to lower his points to make him viable? And like, I fear that you have to make him so low that he's either broken or he's like not viable, if that makes sense. Because like, you don't want your heroes to be killed so easily, you know? And so anyway, 2 questions. And this is my favorite model they've ever made. Again, I really want him to be good. At what do you think that there is a price point that he's good but fair, is question 1, and question 2 is, what is that price for points?
I think there is, and I think it's in the mid 300s at the similar cost to the other Vermin Lords, because he's essentially just an expensive buff wagon. Like, he's probably, despite having the rampage that's cool in combat and having crit mortal on his staff, he probably doesn't want to be in combat just because of how fragile he is. Like, he's still gonna die to most like real hammers in the game. So ideally, he just wants to be sitting behind a screen of clan rats and crapping out double fight every turn. So, and that is a strong effect for sure. And I think it's an effect that you would pay 350 or 360 points for.
Yeah. Carson, what do you think?
I agree with that. Yeah, I think that he's a really cool utility piece. I just think that it's exacerbated right now how bad he is, because we're in a meta where there's so much high quality shooting that he's just going to get picked up off the table against the wrong army, and it's a high likelihood that you're going to see that in a 5-game or 5-round tournament, right?
Totally.
So it feels kind of bad.
Yeah, I when he came out, like when I saw his war scroll, I was like, oh man, this is awesome. It's really fun. I hate the 5-up save, but like I just kept saying at the right price point, I can see it. And then when it came out, I was like, 450, that ain't even close. I said I thought it was exactly 100 points over. I'm glad we agree on that. I don't know that we're going to see a reduction, like a proper reduction anytime soon. That's something that I kind of wish GW would, kind of figure out a little bit better. They don't seem to have an idea. Like, Rattling guns are better than Scourgers, but they're 80 points cheaper for 6. They're 40 points cheaper for 3. That's crazy, right? So like, I think that they really just don't know what stuff is worth a lot of the time. But yeah, I would love to see a reduction. Yeah.
I think GW tends to really highly value and really overcost strong ones per game abilities, which is why, because I think that Scourgers are really just paying for the ones per game that the Galvaneer gives them.
Absolutely. But you got to take the Galvaneer too, like you just said. So there's already a tax on that. Yeah. Well, we'll get there. Okay, I think we're all on the same page for Vizzik, so we'll move on to Thanquol. Thanky Spanky. By the way, where did you put Vizzik on your tier list?
I put him in good if points go down.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Okay, agreed.
I think I put like half of our army in good if points go down.
I think that's true. And actually, I think, to be honest, I think there's one or two that I thought should have gone in there that you put not in there, that you put were like just bad. We'll get to that. I mean, like, and that's a matter of
What
opinion.
if you had a wounds pass off to like clan rats or something like that? Would that make it more
That'd be
enticing?
cool. That'd be cool, but he's named, so he can't get the one from our battle
Yeah.
trades.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we have seen them change war scrolls in the past that are just like kind of bad war scrolls. You know, like something for rat ogres that I would really like to see is like they used to have 6 wounds each. And obviously the points would have to change. I know this. I'm not an idiot, but like, well, most of the time. But rat ogres, like, they used to be 6 wounds. Like, in terms of their size, like they're the same size as trolls or the same size as Kroxigor. Like, I just feel like they should have more wounds, and I think that would make them a lot more interesting, even if they changed nothing else, just the wounds and the points. And they've done that in the past, right? Like, was it Trolls last edition? Or no, it's Kroxigor. Kroxigor went from 4 wounds each to 5 wounds each, I think, at the end of last edition, and now they have another wound. They have 6 wounds. Trolls, same thing. So I don't know. Anyway, Thanquol, Thanky Spanky. You put him in S tier, right?
Yep.
Why?
He's so good. Well, honestly, a big part of it is +1 to cast, and his spell is just busted. Like, no commands until next hero phase in this edition is like backbreaking for so many armies. Like, I felt it against I did a GT last weekend, and I played against Khorne, and Khorne's like entire army is they're based around the Murderlust, redeploy Murderlust trick. I just put no commands on the Bloodthirster every turn, and he just couldn't redeploy Murderlust like at all and it just crippled it. Like, no command is so strong right now. You can unleash spell, get it in your opponent's turn to block them from doing stuff. For an example, like as an example, you issue no commands on the unit that you skitter leap to something, and then issue no commands, and then you dump all your rattling guns in front of it, and they can't redeploy away, and they can't all out defense, and then you just cut it down. Like, he has the no commands spell has so much synergy with the rest of our army, and then on top of that, he's kind of durable. He's heals D3. He kind of shoots. He's good in melee. Like, he just does a laundry list of good things at a reasonable price, like an actually reasonable price compared to most of our other behemoth models.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't like how short the range is, because then you have to skitter leap him to the target to then do that, and then you also have to get that off. He can skitter leap himself, obviously, but I agree that he is very good. You know, heal D3. He's got, like, you know, somewhat reliable combat. Although, like, I got 2 wounds off on a giant. Just that was from rolling bad, because I just didn't have, you know what I mean? I'm hitting on 4s, and I spent the all-out attack elsewhere. But yeah, like 8-inch move, 14 up health, 14 wounds, 4 up save, and a 5 up ward. Makes him pretty durable, especially with the heal D3. Yeah, 2 caster. I think his, like, warp fire attacks are kind of whack, like 10 inches, and he's got 6 attacks. But whatever, you know, they're more reliable than the other ones and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, I think I don't personally put him in S tier, but I can see that. Like, I've been playing against other armies where, like, I just never get that spell off. You know what I mean? Like, I was playing against Skaven, and then they're just redeploying. They're using 3 claw steps ahead to get stuff out of the way or whatever, and like do things like that. Or you know, against Seraphon, it was just like getting blocked every time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, either one spell would get blocked or the other. But I do think he is very good. I don't think you take him and you take a Warp Seer, or you take, like, I'm not usually taking a Vermin Lord if I'm taking Thanquol, especially in Warp Cog, but I do like him. I do think he has a good place. Yeah. No, I think he's good. And I think his points are actually about perfect as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think you can fit him with other Vermin Lords. It does make your list lean for Skaven, but you have to play carefully with Skaven anyway. So it's just he does like there's some synergies, but I agree with your statement on that he doesn't play with the Warp Seer very well, because I think him, Thanquol, and the Warp Seer are kind of fighting for the same spot in your list, which is a semi-expensive, semi-durable double caster support piece.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yo, Jason, thank you so much. Gifted another membership to Onikudaki. Onikudaki. And apparently you've also been a member for 15 months. That's amazing. Thank you so much. 15 months. That is older than some people's children. That's crazy.
Older than me.
Nice. It's older than Carson. He's just a baby. Thank you again. Very generous, very kind. We appreciate you. Caleb says, my current list runs Thanquol, Warp Seer, and a Deceiver. Currently 12-1. Insane. Yeah, that's very elite. That's great, man. That's good for you. That's awesome. Yeah. So, okay. So I guess, Carson, did you want to add anything for, my wife texted me apparently. Did you want to talk about Thanquol at all?
I very much so understand the allure of Thanquol. He's just like an all-around tech piece doing a whole bunch of different things, which is super valuable, especially in a singles GT where you're just like, you need a toolbox. So I like that quite a bit. But actually, the thing I wanted to bring up was something that Mr. Beasley said in chat, which is that he said, just throwing out that Kairos is a 5-up, 5-up, same wounds, almost the same points, and not dead on arrival when talking about Vizzik Skour, which is something interesting to think about. And I wanted to kind of like pick your guys' brains to see like why do you think that is?
I don't know enough about OBR.
Kairos is Tzeentch.
Oh,
Kairos Fate Weaver, yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, for one thing, like, you do have Destiny dice.
Yeah, that was one thing I wanted to bring up. Is like you have essentially a guaranteed teleport to get them out of danger, if you really want it, most of the time anyway. So that's one difference I can think of. The other thing is that the battle tactic ability that Kairos has is amazing, right? And I think the reliable casting too. I mean, I guess this guy Vizzik has got like amazing chanting going on too, but I don't know.
I think possibly one of the things is that Tzeentch as an army offers more debuffs and more durability and more like obstacles in the path of the opponent to get to the support heroes. Skaven, we just kind of like hope our clan rats survive and you can't get to them, or hope we can zone you out enough. But I think Tzeentch has like a lot of specific targeted abilities that make it that are designed to hinder you.
Right.
The
funny thing is,
you don't quite have that.
I think so too. And I mean, like, it's like, I want it to be good. Like, I actually would love it to not be the case. But the funny thing is that like, I mean, this isn't proven it of itself, right? But like, I don't see anyone running Vizzik successfully. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen it, like, I've seen people, even in battle reports and stuff like that, which don't tend to be the most hard-nosed types of things, very tough to keep them alive. Yeah. Like, I think Matt would probably know better than anyone why. Like, cause Matt's like the Tzeentch king of the world, man. Like, you tell us. Like, I don't know. Like, I got it confused. My wife was messaging me about asking for a code for something, and so I didn't even hear you. Like, I know Kairos. I owned Kairos. I thought you said Catacross for some reason. I was thinking to myself, like, he's on a 5-up? That's crazy. Like, why is he on a 5-up? Like, I was like, I really don't know about OBR, apparently. Even less than I thought. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know enough about Tzeentch.
Yeah.
But
he is bringing it to Kippers this weekend. So that'll be something interesting to see the result of.
Matt is bringing what to Kippers?
Vizzik.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, like, if anyone can make it work, I think it's Matt. I don't think he's good. I hope you prove me wrong, Matt. I also kind of hope you don't, because like I'm hoping that they change his points. Like I want them to make him good. Like I don't want you to have to be like doing like 7D chess, like normal Matt Beasley shenanigans. Anyway, okay, we'll move on from Thanky Spanky. Do we want to talk about Lord Screech? He hasn't changed. I don't think he's great. You know,
I don't have a lot to
everything.
say on him. He's just too
No.
expensive.
And on top of that, like if it weren't once per game, you know what I mean? It's like, do you remember like the Necron thing you had to pick, Carson? Like at the start of the game, you had to like pick how your phases would go ahead of time. Yeah. I feel like you have to do this with Lord Screech to make him like viable, and it's just like, or I could just take something that's good. Anyway, okay. He's a named character as well. Okay, the Deceiver, here's where things get a little bit spicy. Mechrat is a huge lover. He's taken the Deceiver into his bosom, as I have in the past. I'm not as big a fan of him. And the reason, the very specific reason, actually there's two reasons. One is because he has, like, he's got reliable damage, but he doesn't have a lot of damage. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, he's 70 points more. And he's like mostly a beat stick. He's like a teleporty, very hard to kill beat stick, but I'm not seeing a lot of other value, right? But Mechrat is a very good player. So here's your chance to defend against the onslaught of nonsense that I slung at you in the battle report because I thought it was funny.
So I think the real strength of the Deceiver is not necessarily in his output, because you're right, his output is not amazing. It's fine is what it is.
Yep.
His strength comes from in denial. He's like the best thing in our book at denying battle tactics, and Skaven is already an army that's very good at doing that. So, for example, things that I've done in the past weekend, I had an opponent call Seize the Center, and my Deceiver was up in the top right corner. What I was able to do was I was able to countercharge an Endless spell to get near the center, and then hit the 4-up to teleport into the center to deny Seize the Center, because it put his unit in combat. Because I knew that if there were two units there, I piled into the second unit and I split my attacks, so I killed neither of them.
Right.
And then he failed Seize the Center because he was in combat. So that's just one example of like another thing that he's really good in. Like, for example, in the Gloomspite Gits matchup, he's really good at killing the Loon Shrine, because he can just charge like an Endless spell or charge a screen and then scurry away to get to the Loon Shrine and then kill it. Or he can teleport, like he can get into the Loon Shrine, and then because he counts as being in combat, he can use his 4-up to teleport to something else once he's gotten in combat with the Loon Shrine. There's just, if you start to like utilize Endless spells and utilize like some of the terrain features and like some of the new additions of 4th edition, he can just be such a pain and such a nuisance. And the amount of times that I've played him against melee armies where they don't even engage with him because they know he's just going to run away, like it's the threat of the 4-up. Like I played a game against Fabian, and he was trying to zone out the 13-inch bubble completely. So he had like every time the Deceiver went somewhere on the board, he just like moved everything away from it. And it's just like he just causes so much pain for your opponent. It makes it so hard for your opponent to play the game, and he forces mistakes and he forces failed tactics and just all sorts of stuff like that. He just gives you so many outs and edges you ahead so well, because at the end of the day, it's a scoring game, and he is just about the most powerful scoring unit that we have, at denying scoring and scoring himself.
Yeah, it's like a complete skill check against your opponent for making sure that they don't have like a foot hero sitting in the middle of nowhere that you can just teleport to an axe when they're trying to kill the Deceiver. Tactic denial, like you're saying. There was one thing I wanted to bring up though. You mentioned doing scurry away and then going to kill a Loon Shrine. I don't think you can
can't
retreat
be in
and
combat.
then fight.
But like you can retreat. Oh, Wait, say that again.
Because retreat is a core keyword ability, I believe, and so is fight. Is it not?
I meant like retreat.
Oh, I see. And just be in combat with it later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
retreat and then be in combat with it later.
Gotcha.
Because you're right, like you can't like scurry away and then pile in because they're both core abilities. So it's like, you can't do that. But
it's still a really useful thing to be able to do for sure.
Well, and you could teleport. You can try and teleport first, and then if you fail it, you can scurry away.
Yeah. One thing to note: you can't teleport to endless spells or faction terrain because they don't count as enemy units. But you can get in combat with them and then teleport from them because you count as being in combat with them. The only check for the 4 ability is that you have to be in combat, but to teleport you have to target a point that's within an inch of an enemy unit. So I've made that mistake in the past, but
that's a good distinction.
Because like the Balloon Shrine is so big, it's really easy to like skitter leap to it and then count as being in combat with it and then do a scurry away to an objective. Or something I didn't even talk about that you can do is you can hit the 4-up to teleport out of a combat and then hit the 3-up to scurry away to an objective. So I've had the Deceiver like cover half the board in one turn of movement. He can be randomly so mobile.
Yeah, that's kind of like my main problem with it is that it's a 4-up. So like it's so unreliable, but I like what you said, like, so like if like what you talked about, like in terms of denying your battle tactic was you countercharged, spending 2 CP, right, to countercharge, and then you did get the 4-up, right? If you were talking about that in terms of like your turn, like, oh, I did this in my turn to get a battle tactic, I'd be like, that's just insanely good luck, right? But you're not doing that. So what I liked about that was that, like, if you didn't get it, well, your opponent got your battle tactic like they thought they were going to. But you did this and then they didn't get it. So like if you didn't get it, it's not like it was ruining your chances of scoring points. All it did was not stop your opponent from getting points. So I really do like that. You made like a very good I mean, okay, so fair enough, right? Now, okay, so are we good with the Deceiver, right?
So I think I've said everything I need to about him.
Cool. Cool. I'm going to skip past the Warbringer is a beat stick. I don't think we need to say anything more. He's a beat stick. He's good at being a beat stick, but that's all he does, and I don't think he's worth his points for that. Maybe if he had like a 3-up save or something cool that just made him like a little bit unique within Skaven. But anyway, Verminlord Corruptor, I got nothing to say about this guy. What about you guys?
He's just a worse Warbringer.
He's just a worse Warbringer, and he's got the priest keyword, but there's way better priests elsewhere in the book. Goodbye. So long. Okay, now we've got my personal candidate. Like, I like this guy the best. Okay, so... Okay, first of all, he's 70 points less. That's kind of my whole thing. Like, honestly, if the Deceiver and the Warp Seer were similar points, I would be like in a real pickle. Because I actually think their War Scrolls are similar in terms of utility. But like as I said at the start of the stream, I think the most powerful ability we have is our 3 Claw Steps Ahead. And this guy adds an extra 2 inches to that. And that's actually a lot. Like for most of the book, that's an extra 33% movement. You know what I mean? Your clan rats go from 6 to 8. Like it goes from like a normal amount of movement to like a good amount of movement. And it's a lot of the time I find it's just enough to stop gaps and deny tactics. Like a lot of people, they're not going to I always tell people like 3 Claw Steps Ahead, this is how it works. But then it's tough to keep that in your mind the whole time. You know what I mean? So they're like, well, even if he rolls a 6 for his redeploy, I'm 8. I'm fine. You know what I mean? And then it's like 3 Claw Steps Ahead, 8, and then I can still redeploy. Like they're actually, it's like legitimate for denying tactics on his own, just for in that regard. He's also a two caster. I think all the Vermin Lords should have stayed two casters, but whatever, blah 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 blah. Right? Okay, so he's also a two caster. He doesn't have any pluses to cast, but he does have an like insanely good spell, which I've also used to deny tactics, which is on it's on the 7, which is the rough part. But if you can get him near, you know, a place of power, something like that, you can make it a 6 or +1. And basically where he is making units charge on 1 dice. So I had this game with Eric, who's an amazing Seraphon player. And he was teleporting his stupid, annoying piece of crap skinks around the board and just making me 1d6 charge. And I kept getting that spell off. So we had like literally like 3 units on the board at all times who were rolling 1 dice to charge. And it was insanely powerful. Like it was so crazy powerful. Like his hammer units, his Kroxigor never got in. His Kroxigor, his big, huge unit of like 400 and something point Kroxigor, they literally never got in because they were just sitting there with their tails in the wind. And then on top of that, I'm moving away from them and they were 1d6 charge. Like there was no hope. He wasn't even like within 12 inches or something at one point. Like he was just like, he couldn't even make it on 2d6. And then on top of that, so there is like, you can pair him up with like other hard hitters, clan rats, storm vermin, rat ogres, storm fiends, whatever. And on a 4-up, he could charge in there. On a 4-up, they're fighting last. So that means you get to fight with your rat ogres and him first. And then if that doesn't go off and you want to keep him alive, 3-up, F off out of there. Like I love this guy. Like he's actually like one of my favorite units in the book. I do agree that like you don't put him and Thanquol in most lists together because they're fighting for the same spot. I don't think monsters are very good in this edition in general. But I'm gonna go like this. So this is my pushback, right? I know you put him in A tier as well, or you put him in A tier. I put him in S tier personally. But like the fun part about this whole thing is like you've given me something to think about for the Deceiver. You know what I mean? Like I actually find myself a lot of the time with 70 points or 90 points extra in my Skaven list. So like I'll throw the Deceiver in there and see if I can F with people's battle tactics. But that's sort of my spiel on the Warp Seer. He also has like damage 3, rend 2. So pretty reliable. Hitting on 4s is rough, but yeah. Is there anything you... Oh, the other thing too, actually, there's one final thing that I'll say about him that I forgot to mention when I was joking with you on stream. Was the great thing about the Warp Seer is he's Master Clan. And that makes him a hero where you can put whatever you want in his battalion, whereas the Deceiver has access to Night Runners and the Assassin. Is that it?
And 1 unit of clan rats.
Oh, and 1 unit, right. Duh, yeah, totally. Yeah, so that was my other problem was I was having trouble building lists because if I have the Deceiver in there, I basically have to have a Master Clan. Now, the Grey Seer on foot is very good, and so you could totally argue for that. But then, you know, I like to be a 2-drop if I can. And so if the Deceiver basically means you're auto a 3-drop, I think. So, yeah, anyway, that's my pushback. You know, I'll give you a chance to respond and like, what do you think about that? Like maybe, have I convinced you to maybe try him again and like, see what you can, you've convinced me. I'm going to try the Deceiver again.
Sure. Well, so I did try a list with the Deceiver and the Warp Seer, and I gave up Thanquol, and it was pretty fun. His spell is really addictive. Like the 1d6 charging is really, I definitely have tried him in the past. And I will continue to try him in the future because I do like him a lot. Like don't let my love for the Deceiver fool you. I do really, really like the Warp Seer too. That's only thing that I think I want to say is that I would argue that 3 claw steps ahead is an easier mechanic to play around than the Deceiver's 13-inch teleport. So having an extra 2 inches and making it an on average 8-inch move, if your opponent knows about it, it is still a little easier to play around that than it is for the Deceiver to randomly hit a counter charge and then a 4-up. that would be my only like light pushback. But I think for the most part, I agree that the Warp Seer is really good. I just think that the Deceiver, for the way that I play, I think the Deceiver is just more suited to my play style and is a slight bit better at the tactics denial role, which I find very important in Skaven. But I agree that the Warp Seer can do it too.
I think, not to like, whatever, go back and forth with compliments. I actually agree with you that the Warp Seer's plus 2 inches on the 3 claw steps ahead is easier to play around. But then my one small pushback on that is that the Deceiver's thing is random. So it's just like, it's a 50-50 shot whether it goes off or not. But
I actually think that's a point in its favor, if anything. It's kind of like with Cruel Boys, with dirty tricks, there's, if they've just blown all their dirty tricks on their own turn or something like that, and then in your turn, everything's on a 5-up, it's like, can I plan on doing anything when I might be striking last 1/3 of the time? Like, do I rely on this? Like there's like a mental load in trying to balance chance as opposed to knowing that something exactly happens. Where it's like, I know that your clan rats are going to move 8 inches in my hero phase. I know that for a fact. Therefore, I can plan around it by placing things in certain ways or planning my tactics in certain ways. But if it's like 4-up, teleport, 3-up, run away, like that's way harder to just spatially map out in your mind ahead of time than this extra movement is, right?
yeah, honestly, even if it was a 3-up, but like, you might miss that like 10 times in a row on a 4-up. Like, you know what I mean?
Maybe.
Like, yeah. So I don't know. Like, I was using the Deceiver like in every list in AOS 3 because you put the retreat out of combat, and sometimes you give him the fly ability, and then like, man, like people hated playing against him because it was just like, there's no point in charging him, like, unless you can totally wrap that whole area or shoot him off the board. But I mean, like, I think we've definitely said everything we need. I like them both. They're both awesome. Would highly recommend. I'm going to give the Deceiver another solid shot. Maybe I'll take him with Thanquol or like a Grey Seer if I'm going for 3 drops. Speaking of Grey Seers, so we've got a 5-wound hero on a 6-inch move, 6-up save, 2 control. Who cares about anything other than he's a 1-cast wizard now, unfortunately, but he does have his 3d6 warpstone shards. If the roll is a 13, cannot be unbound, and it inflicts D3 mortals to himself. If it's not, then you take the 2 highest. Mechrat, you probably don't know this. For AOS 2, every time I took this guy, I rolled 13 on 3d6. The chances are, I think it's like 9 or 10% to do that. I did it every single time for my first, I didn't take him in every game, but every time I took him, it was like the first 8 games in a row that I took him. And the last time I was playing against Andy Selwood, TO of Kipper's Malay, and I explained it to him. I was like, I've done this every time. I calculated at the time, it was like 9.6% or something like that you do this. And I was like, it's going to happen. I'm just going to tell you ahead of time. And back then, he used to just instantly kill himself. That's what happened before Carson. He didn't take D3 mortal wounds. He just died. And I was like, it's going to suck because I'm going to lose my hero. And then I did it, and we laughed so freaking hard. Luckily, the ability is much better now. He just takes D3 mortal wounds as of 3rd edition. But the severe lack of pluses to cast in general, and especially in our book now, like now that Thanquol isn't +3 or +4 to cast, he's just +1. This guy becomes very attractive. He's a foot hero. I think foot heroes are better in general. He's Master Clan. He's got a bitchin' new model. It's absolutely rad. Yeah. Add any, I think you put him in S tier as well.
He's a cheap. He's really cheap. Is the other thing. He's like 120. He's a cheap foot hero with good regiment options that casts a spell reliably every turn, and that's like about all you want out of a foot hero. He literally checks like every box for a good foot hero.
He really does. The only downside is his of course his 3d6 cast is only in your own hero phase, but okay. I'll take that. Yeah, it's like the most reliable way of getting out the bell, that we have. Yeah. Like I'm hoping to hit it. Thank you, Keith. If you guys are enjoying what you're seeing, please, hit the subscribe button, the like button, and give Mechrat, Keegan here, a subscribe on his channel. It's a new channel, but it's freaking awesome. He obviously knows what he's talking about. Very good player. So hit him up. Mechrat, Mechrat. And also, like us, not like us. Give us a like and a comment if you're watching this later. Tell us what you think. Where do you fall on the Deceiver versus Warpseer debate? Let us know in the comments. Yeah, or maybe you like Vizzik, maybe you like the Corruptor. I really have an open mind, and I love everything Skaven, so I want to hear it all. I truly am interested. The Grey Seer on Screaming Bell. Should we move along to the next thing?
Yeah, we could. With this, we have a lot of heroes. We could probably. The only one I think that I would highlight is the Arch Warlock, because I think he's amazing, and I've been running him in most of my lists recently because +1 command point per turn is really, really freaking good right now.
Yep. And you're always Overwatch. Okay, so first of all, it's really quick. I was making a joke about the Grey Seer on Screaming Bell.
Oh, okay.
350 points is way too much, and it's been a 1d6 roll since third, and it's just so unreliable. It's not great. He doesn't need to be pushed into battle anymore, which is nice, but it's just way, way, way too many. And he can't get a free Vermilord anymore. It's crazy. I have no idea why he's 350 points. Yeah. Okay. Arch Warlock. Sorry?
I just said too expensive.
For sure. The only downside to the Arch Warlock is the new model. He looks cool, right? But from what I understand, he's one of the most fragile models they've ever made.
I wouldn't know. I use my metal model.
I use my Kit Claw as well, and I'm hoping to actually use the new, assuming the Underworld's Warband is not viable in the new book. I love that new Arch Warlock looking dude with the drill gun or whatever the heck he's got. It's so badass. So I'm planning on getting him, but I really do like the Arch Warlock model, and I might get him anyway just to paint him. And it's also nice to just have a plastic model if you're traveling, but yeah, we'll see. Okay, yes. So the Arch Warlock, 170 points. You're 170 points? He's only one caster. Why would you do? No, yeah, free CP every other turn, so you get an extra 5, assuming he survives. CP per game is worth every point, every possible avenue of possible use for him. He just tells a unit, because you're overwatching every turn, right? You're doing covering fire every turn in Warp Cog. I think the only distinction I would make is we're only talking in Warp Cog, right? Outside
if
of Warp
you're running
Cog,
Scryer shooting, you're running this guy.
You're running this guy. Yeah. It's almost like his cast, his spell cast is like a bonus. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know that there is anything else to say. There's no downside to running a Scryer hero, because you want to run the Scryer units anyway.
Yeah, another little point in his favor is there's a restriction in the Skaven regiments that you can only include one weapons team on a non-Scryer hero. So if you're running multiple units of rattling guns, you can just give them all to this guy and then not gunk up your regiments with them. So it's he already is, his regiments options are good for a Scryer list, and then he does 2 really useful things for 170 points. Why wouldn't you run him? He's great.
I agree. And unfortunately, I cannot vote in the poll that Carson just ran. You're a jerk, Carson.
50-50. It's 50-50.
Yeah. I mean,
is it really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's so funny that it is 50-50. I kind of hope it stays that way. That's super funny. Okay, so moving right along, the Galvanier, 140 points. If you're taking Scourgers, yes, no, I hear you. I think he's too expensive. I actually like him, though. I actually like him just because, so he's got an 18-inch gun. It's only got 2 shots, but it is 3s and 3s, and it is 2 rend. So if you do, like, if you put any wounds on a unit, then his ability is called More Warp Volt Doom. Basically, it just does splash mortals to every unit around them, right? I find that very interesting for just because, like, otherwise you can't, like, there's a lot of units that you can't be doing chip mortals on, that are protected by hero saves and different things like that. Like, that's interesting. But if you're taking Scourgers, you have to take this guy, which is kind of like, it's almost a point against Scourgers in a way. But I don't know. He looks awesome. You really don't like him, though, hey?
I actually think I disagree. I don't think you have to take this guy if you're playing Scourgers, because I think there is some like value to the fact that you can run a unit of Scourgers and a unit of Rattling Guns and then all out attack one of them, and then the other one already hits on 2s, so you're getting maximum value out of that.
Yep.
And the Scourgers are like super reliable and do a ton of damage already. I think the 60 shots once per game is overkill. I think there's like not like 60 shots on 2s and 3s with crit 2 hits, Ren 1 is like overkill, I think, in my opinion. And he's also a hero that isn't a wizard, and I think Skaven's spells are so good and endless spells are so good right now that you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by not playing a wizard hero.
That is my major problem with him as well, actually. Aside from the points, I don't mind him if you're doing like if you're already at 3 drops, because he is another scryer hero. But yeah, overall I agree. I'm not a huge fan of him, and he is on a 5-up. Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, like, and I didn't mean you have to run him. Of course, you don't have to run anything, but like, I feel compelled to run him, because like, sure, like, it's overkill. Most things are overkill, right? But like, you rock up to a giant, you're just like, I'm glad I got my Galvanier now, because here we go, or like a unit of like Varangard maybe, or Chaos Knights or Trolls or something like that. Especially cavalry, yeah, you can really fling some serious lightning. Carson, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think I agree. I feel like I'm not asking you or talking to you enough, Carson.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I'll chime in when I have thoughts. I'm happy giving like the synopsis at the end of my feelings too, because this is your guys' time to shine. You guys are the Skaven main players.
That's me gobbling Warpstone. Yeah. Appreciate that. Well, and also your mustache was texting me and saying like, make sure you give Carson enough chances, to talk. So he's very defensive of you. Storm Fiends are Storm Fiends are very interesting. I think they would be absolutely god-awful if it weren't for the fact that you can bring them up with Warp Grinders in your opponent's movement phase. Like, I think that's what makes them like good and or viable. I personally, and I would love to hear what your guys' thoughts are. I think they're just a little too expensive right now. Like, if they were just a little bit cheaper, I would be happy to pay the points.
Yeah, I think they're a little too expensive. The fact that you could get 4 Doom Flayers for the same price as 3 Storm Fiends kind of hurts them a little bit. I agree that I think the main reason you run these guys is because they can deep strike in your opponent's turn. You can snag objectives, you can move them up in your turn and get easy charges and stuff. Like, that's definitely the main reason you run them. For anybody that wants to run these guys, don't run them as shooting units. That's a trap. They're better in melee. Their shooting is pretty garbage compared to our other shooting units.
They're also like, I think they're a lot better in Molder because +1 attack on their melee profile is insane because of the quality of attacks that they get. Especially with like shot gauntlets or something like that, you're getting another kick at that D6 hits. I was running Doomflayer gauntlets at first. Apparently, from what I understand, I didn't actually run the math myself. Apparently, they're slightly better on the charge, and the shot gauntlets are better not on the charge. But there's just something about rolling a bunch of dice and sixes become D6 hits. Like I've had some insanely fun and awesome luck with those. But yeah, okay, so I think we're totally in agreement about the Storm Fiends. Is it a price point problem then? Because you just said you could run 4 of them. Now the Doomflayers are doing something very different. But you know, but they're very fast, like they're mobile, they're awesome, frankly, right? But like what it sounds like it's a points problem though for you.
It is. It's definitely a points problem. They have a good war scroll. Like fundamentally, they have a good war scroll.
I
They're like
agree.
okay in melee. They're kind of durable. Don't pay attention to their shooting really. The main reason you're running them is because they wound on 2s like in melee and they can deep strike. Like so they're fine. They're just probably 20 points too expensive.
Yeah. I think that's about where I land too, actually. Funny enough. Okay. Bombardier, skip.
Skip.
Yeah. And engineer, do we skip?
Yes, because Giselles are not good anymore.
Okay. We're in agreement. It's too bad. Like
It's
they're
really
they're so close. Like if they just left them as they were in the index, then they're perfectly usable. I would still take them, to be honest. They just those 2 changes to we'll see in a second. I mean, and like before, you're only taking the engineer so you can snipe off heroes. But if you're not taking Giselle anyway, okay, warp lightning cannon.
I said this in my tier list video, and I'm going to say it again now because I think it's going to really apply. As long as Rattling guns exist, basically every single one of our other shooting units does not matter. Because Rattling guns are just so much better. Like, there's no reason to run the artillery that costs 180 points or 170 points when you get Rattling guns that do, like, literally double the damage. For 150 points, and you can bring Rattling guns back and you can buff them. Like
All of that is true, except I think the warp lightning cannon went down in the book. I think it might be 150 points now.
Even so, Rattling guns are still better.
I don't disagree. Let me just check on that because now I'm super curious. 160 points. So we split the difference there. So 10 points more. You do get a farther range. You do get access to straight mortals. The problem is actually for me is a lot of it is just how they changed how the mortals work. You know what I mean? It's less random because you're rolling to hit, but then you're getting 2d6 hits. You're getting 2d6 attacks. So it's like you might roll the double ones and then, yeah. I think the other problem is that it's doing it on 4s. I want to like it. I think it's just a little too, I think it's a price point problem. Like, I don't think I'm running, like let's take Rattling guns aside. Like, let's just assume that the Rattling guns are going to be brought in line into some kind of internal balance in terms of pointing them within the book. Whatever that is. I don't know what that is, to be honest. But like with warp lightning cannons, though, I'm not taking them like anyway as it sits right now. Like, if you delete Rattling guns and Scourgers and warp fire throwers, I still don't think I'm taking warp lightning cannons as it sits right now. Like I know there's like that meme list out there of Lord Screech, and then once per game they're all hitting on 3s, but like like even if you could do that every turn, I don't think I'm doing that, to be honest. Like
I think what killed Warp Lightning Cannons is that they made the overcharge a once per turn ability, because I used to run them in 3rd edition and I ran 3 of them because
Me
you
too.
could overcharge all of them and
Yep.
you could shoot something and deal like 30 mortal wounds to it, or
Yep.
20, 24, 25 mortal wounds to it, and then vaporize it completely.
Mhm.
And then it was worth spending 500, 600 points on artillery because you were removing a unit a turn. But 9 mortal wounds, I did the math on them. It's about 9 mortal wounds is what they do if you all out attack and overcharge them. That's not removing a unit.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying. The goal of shooting units isn't to chip away; it's to try to. They're your hammers, and
Exactly.
9 mortal wounds isn't a hammer amount of damage.
No, and it is still random, too, because like it's either doing nothing with 2d6. And that could be the overcharged one, or I mean the overcharged one. Like obviously, it has more, but like my point is just that you still might get screwed over by that, and like you said, you can't overcharge it. Yeah, I was actually taking them just because I liked them at first, and Matthias and I did like a what do you call it? Like we did a Civil War game, Skaven versus Skaven, gentleman's agreement. No Thanquol, because Thanquol was totally broken with Laoshan back then. And also doesn't make sense like lore wise. So we did this, and I took 3 Warp Lightning Cannons against him. And this is before he went to Worlds and got second or whatever, and he was running it. And like it just won me the game. And like I rolled well as well, but it just like killed everything. And it was just like, okay, like there was just nothing he could do. Yeah, I'm totally in agreement. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. We've got beautiful, brand new Acolyte Globadiers. They keep changing their names. What do you think about them? So they're anti-infantry. They're only 1 attack each, +1 for the champion. So you're throwing 6 dice. Excuse me, 3s and 3s, 1 rend, D3 damage. Add 1 to the damage characteristic if there's 10 or more models. So it becomes D3 +1. And then while this unit... Oh yeah, and then they got the weapons team thing. They've got 2 wounds each. They're not shootable, only 10-inch range. They seem just terrible. Oh, yeah, and I think I mentioned this, but they're anti-infantry, so they're -2 rend against infantry. They can get the Scryer benefit, though. So you could have them on 2s and 2s if you all on attack. And they're 130 points for 5, 10 wounds. They're not good as they sit right now, right? I think we all agree.
Terrible.
They're quite bad, right? But I don't think the War Scroll is bad. And here's why. They're a weapons team that can be protected by your clan rats. They're 2 wounds each. And if you take a pack of 6 of them, they could be sitting behind a unit of clan rats as like a countershoot kind of unit, right? The problem for me is their price point for what they're doing. They don't have the range, but at like 90 or 100 points, I could actually see taking a unit of 6 of these guys, or even just a unit of 3, just to muck around with one of the units of clan rats. It's just like a counterpunch.
They come in 5s, not 3s.
I'm sorry. That's what I
know. Just to clarify for the stream.
Yeah. Did I say 3s? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, they come in 5. So like I think I did say 10 wounds. And I think all the stats I gave was correct because it's 6 attacks because it's 5, 1 each +1 for the champion. Yep. So if you got them in a pack of 10, you're rocking what? You're rocking 11 attacks, potentially 2s and 2s, -2 rend against infantry, D3 +1 damage sometimes, right? For 130 points, in no freaking universe ever. I don't think there's any debate on that. I would much rather have warp fire throwers if we're going for like the low range sort of weapons teams, right? But What do you think about that? Like, what do you think? Do you think there is a price point where they become interesting?
So I think my main problem with the acolytes is they're kind of in limbo for as to what their role is. So you have a couple different roles for shooting units. You have like long range shooting, you have like mid range high output, you have like close range super high output. And these guys don't have a super high output for being close range, no matter how you slice it. So even if you make them crazy cheap, their output is still like they have to be under like peak conditions. Like they have to have 4 conditions met. They have to be shooting an infantry unit that has 10 or more models. They have to have +1 to hit and +1 to wound. And even then, I'm pretty sure they do about the same damage as 6 warp fire throwers. They might even do less. So it's like,
But 6 warp fire throwers are like 260 points. I think they're the same right now, which is crazy. Obviously,
they're the same.
I'm not. Yeah, there's no reason why they should ever be the same amount of points. Right.
But even if they're cheaper, 10-inch range shooting, you're just going to take a melee unit that can charge and do more damage in melee anyway. Like the point that I was trying to make, their role, they're like in role limbo, because at that short of range, they don't do enough output to justify them over a melee hammer.
That's so.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying completely. What I was trying to say earlier is that like their role for me is just having a cheap unit, because we don't have any cheap units in the book. I forget what the cheapest unit in the book I think is a Clawlord on foot, which is like a tax on a tax, because it's like a bad unit that is a foot hero that you don't want to take and is adding to your drops, right? But like we don't have any like units under 100 points. Like most, or not most, but a lot of books have like a 70-point unit or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, or an 80-point unit like Chameleon Skinks or Terra Wings, Fellbats, that kind of thing. It fills a role, but it's also filling a role that's super cheap. So you can like use it to plug in. Like at 90 points, like I'd be really curious, because like, you know, like I've made a lot of lists that are 19-10 points, you know? So like that's kind of what I was sort of asking about, was like, you know, like could you see like them as like a fill in, like I need another unit. Like there's actually value in this game in just having like another unit, like something to just sit on an objective, something to just be a screen. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I was sort of saying. Like,
yeah, I could see it. Like if they were like 90 or 80 points, you could run them as a really cheap screen that might do some tickle damage, but they'd have to go down like that much, which I don't know if they would.
I don't think they will.
Want to give us cheap units for some reason.
And it's Skaven too.
I'm surprised that they didn't. This weapons team kind of seems like the one that should have been the debuff piece in some way.
Yeah.
Just because
that's
like
so true.
Their only special ability is that they just deal more damage situationally, and it's so hard. Like Keegan was saying, it's so hard to get them in a position where you wouldn't rather just have a melee hammer, because like if you get them like barely in range, your enemy's like, okay, I spend a CP and they do nothing because it's 10-inch range. I'm just going to step out of their range and it's going to be fine. You can't like drop them down from a Gnawhole outside of 9. Same problem. You roll a 2 up on a redeploy and everything's out of range. And if they do ever actually get into combat, they're just gonna die. Like 2 wounds is fine, but on a 6-up save, it's nothing, right? Like that's like accidentally being killed by a screen territory.
Yeah,
it's pretty rough.
A unit of clan rats will take them out easy. Even a unit of 20 will kill them. But they do have they are protected by the hidden weapon team rule. So
for shooting,
yeah, for shooting, yeah. For sure.
I don't think I would ever want to shoot them. Like,
fair enough.
I don't really care.
Yeah. I agree. Unfortunately, the Warlord is 100. That's what I thought. Yeah. Unfortunately, I have to agree. I think the new models are completely awesome. Like they're some of my favorite new models, to be honest. So I was probably wishful thinking a little bit. Like I was kind of on the same page, but I was hoping you guys could talk me out of it. But no, my dreams are dashed. We already talked about the Giselle. They are shapoopy. It's unfortunate. I tried running them just because I didn't want to proxy against Pat. The longer range shooting wasn't bad, but it's just kind of like underwhelming for, you know what I mean, what they are now. And I think, and I kind of said this before, but if we lose access to the +1/+1 from the priority target, then they become even more dumpstered, and that definitely happened. The Rattling Warp Blaster was never good. It's like so crazy overpointed. It's wild. Is there any redeeming thing for this?
I think this is one of the units that I actually put in Bad War Scroll tier on my tier list because there is not a points value that saves this unit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
It's really not. Like, unless they make it like so obscenely cheap that you can literally run 20 of them in a list.
Right.
Like, but you know, it's like what, 180, 190 right now. Even if it goes down to 120, I don't even know. Like, maybe at like 120 you'd play it, but like it's never gonna get that low.
It's never going to get
It's
that
just
low.
fundamentally, it's a Bad War Scroll.
Yeah, I agree. It's too bad because the unit looks freaking cool as hell.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Okay. Yeah, Jim says I take the Claw Lord out of pity. That's godlike. Would you mind closing the poll? I can't see the chat half the time because it blocks it on OBS.
Yes.
Thanks.
Actually, no.
Appreciate. Okay. Okay. I guess I gotta go over to YouTube. Doomflayer's freaking awesome. What's interesting about them too, so like the only downside to them is they have very random movement. Like on average, and like a lot of the time, like I had a game in my last game, or one of my last games with Pat, I played them and I was rolling like 10 on my 2d6s for like both units, and they're just tearing around super fast. And then they also have 2d6 attacks, and I was rolling high on that, and they seemed like completely overpowered, right? But then in like the final round, I rolled like a 1 and a 2 for my movement, so they moved 5 inches, weren't even close enough to make a charge. And then the next turn, I did make a charge, and then I rolled I think I rolled double ones on their attacks, and they didn't do anything either. So like they're random. They're very Skaven. They're very interesting. I don't know if this is the right points for them, but I like them a lot, and I'm taking at least one in most lists. Mostly as like an objective grabber, like battle tactic achiever kind of unit. What do you think?
I think they're a hammer, honestly. Like they definitely can be. Like you can take 2 units of them and have them be an objective unit. They definitely fill that role, and I think they're cheap enough to do that too. I've been running them as a hammer in a unit of 4 with priority target or anti-monster whatever, or anti whatever +1. But just having a unit that has the potential of being that fast is so good for us because of 3 claw steps ahead. Like the fact that they could move like 13 inches with a 3 claw steps ahead and randomly go steal an objective, it's one of those, like another one of those things that we've talked about already, like where it's really hard for your opponent to plan around this unit existing because they could randomly go 13 inches and steal an objective and then scoot around to the back line and shred a bunch of heroes or shred a unit or something like that. And I mean, in a unit of 4, their output is amazing. I just catapulted them into a unit of 6 rock guts just to see what would happen, and I killed 4 of them.
Jeez.
So I was like, wow, okay.
That's pretty good rolling. They do have +1 damage on the charge and +1 rend against infantry. Sorry, Carson, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
I was just gonna say, like, they on average for a 260 point unit, if you reinforce them, they do have like a higher output than Ogre Gluttons do, even, which is something to kind of. And that's on average, too. They can spike way higher than that, right? Like, if you roll super hot on those 2d6, it's going to be a ludicrous amount of attacks going into something. And Ren 2 is amazing. Damage 2 on the charge is amazing. Like, it's super solid for sure.
Yep. I agree with everything you guys are saying. For me, right now, I actually think that they're pointed probably perfect. Like I could see them going up slightly or down slightly. I wouldn't want to see too much of a change either way because it's the randomness. It's just like reliability is one of the more important things in this game, and you know, like they might be a rockin' unit all game, and then when you actually need them, they're a wet fart. You know, both in movement, which is like if they just wasn't +3, if it wasn't 2d6 +3, if it was like, you know, like 1d6 +7 or something like that. You know what I mean? It would feel a little bit better, but like they can't even take the flanks turn 1 reliably at all. You know? You know, you could run, you know. But anyway, okay. But I think we like them overall. I've actually only been running them in units of 2 so far because I'm mostly running them as tactic, you know, grabbers and whatnot, achievers. And because of the random movement, I like having them in 2s instead of one big unit, because if I flub the movement, I get another shot at it. But anyway, that's sort of, yeah. Anything to add? What do you guys think about their points?
Yeah, they seem good. I also like that they're a weird keyword. They're not cavalry or infantry, which, you know, tends to be what people have anti-rend-wise against.
That's true.
So it's kind of nice.
I kind of wish that they were cavalry, though, just because like then they wouldn't take mortal wounds when they F off out of combat. And I don't think they should either. Like they should be run like they are in Total War, but que sera sera. Is the Warp Grinder the worst unit in the book?
Probably. It's probably either the Claw Lord or the Warp Grinder. It's one of those two.
Big ups to
it's terrible. It's completely terrible.
It's so bad. And what's funny too is if you were paying attention to like the chat groups and whatnot before they came out, when they said like this thing can actually poop up into combat and bring a unit, people were like, this is broken. There's no way that this isn't broken. Like, what are they thinking? And blah blah blah. And I'm like, guys, all they said was that they can do that. You don't know the cost. Like back in the day, like you could do that in AOS 1 with the what's it called? The Goutfire Scorch Battalion. But then they took mortal wounds and no one did it, you know? And now this unit comes out and it's like probably the worst unit in the book. It's overpointed so badly. It's actually hilarious to me. Like, I'm actually super thankful that they made it, like, not only bad, but pointed terribly as well, so I could just save my money for a little bit and feel zero compunction or need about buying even a single thing from this really cool-looking unit. But other than that, like, it's just so dumb how bad it is.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's not even, like, you could poop... honestly, if you could even just come up in your opponent's movement phase, even if it was like on a 4-up still, I could still see something there. You know what I mean? Because that could really F with tactics, right? But
absolutely,
yeah, 170 points, they're out of their mind. It's a Doomflayer, Rob. They should take mortal wounds just from existing. Keith makes a great point, but then they should also be doing mortal wounds just for existing. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like they should maybe be doing both. It should be like just flying apart at the seams and killing everything around it, including themselves. Okay. Kritok Foulblade. What a badass unit. Super interesting war scroll. What do we think, Keegan? I can't wait to hear your opinion on this.
I actually think he's a trap because he's an expensive foot hero that isn't a wizard, that does something that you have that does something that a plague pack can do. The main reason you're taking him is for a free +1 to wound for storm vermin, and plague packs just do that. Like they just get the prayer off and give you +1 to wound anyway.
Right.
His 3 claw steps ability is cute. His like extra 3 claw steps, it's probably decent if you're running a mostly verminous list, because 2-3 claw steps is a lot of extra movement. But on the flip side, Skaven is already a super command point hungry army.
Yep.
So I'm not I tried him like 2 or 3 times, and I just felt like I was wishing I had a different hero than him. I really just think he's
Damn.
probably a trap.
What's funny is you say he's a trap, and like, to be honest, I never thought he was like good. Like, I haven't seen any stands. Like, but I have brought him up in the past as like maybe in a like you just said, in a fully verminous list, if his 3 claw steps ahead thing, if you didn't need a command point on it, suddenly to me he becomes quite interesting. But you know, my hope is that he's viable. I love the model again. I hope that he's viable in like a very focused verminous list. But yeah, I don't think so either. I was hoping you had something like that I hadn't thought of. But I haven't even run him yet. I haven't even put him together. I'm gonna paint him because he looks freaking cool, and his lore about like a vermin lord's soul being trapped in his sword is so freaking awesome. I love it so much. But
Yeah, his lore's cool, his model's great, but on the table, I'm not convinced. I'm selling. I'm not buying.
Yeah, for sure. I think like I'm hoping maybe like he comes down in points enough that he, you know, maybe he becomes interesting, but probably not. Claw Lord, pass, hard pass. Let me know if you guys like have anything to say on any of these units. Claw Lord on Gnaw Beast, super looks cool, right?
I don't think there's anything there though. I don't think there's any tech or anything.
Me too. Even if they just gave him a 3-up save, just something. Throw us a freaking bone here. Clan Rats, like we kind of already talked about them, but like they're super good.
Yeah.
Just a great.
They're kind of just like any other army's like core unit. Like you don't really have a lot to say about gluttons. You don't really have a lot to say about bliss barbs. They're just good.
Yep.
And that's it.
They're just solid. They do what they say on the tin. The crit auto wound is really great on the 2 attacks, and returning D3 slain models is cool. You know, it's just like a slow regenerative thing. They lost a lot coming from the last edition. They used to be able to get an extra 2 inches when they ran, as long as they rolled it. You know, retreat and charge on both them and Storm Vermin. Speaking of Storm Vermin, you know, good blender unit. I mean, we've already talked about it, right? They moved up to 28 millimeter bases, which is something to note for people who are using their old models. Yeah, they're okay.
Yeah, they're fine.
Yeah.
Not really much to say about Storm Vermin. They're just a somewhat efficient melee unit that is kind of at the moment outshone by our other melee units, but maybe they could be good. They're good with Vizzik. So once the meta shifts or Vizzik gets cheaper and Vizzik becomes more meta, Vizzik will be like Storm Vermin plus Vizzik will be a good strategy, but it's not right now because of the meta's at.
Well, and the points in itself, I think, are kind of an issue for both Storm Vermin and for Vizzik. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay. But like, why do you think that Storm Vermin are good with Vizzik?
Because they have a 4-up save, so if you do the crazy buff stat like debuff stacking build, like -1 attacks, -1 to wound, -1 to hit from all of our sources, they can be annoying to kill, and they are our most they're I think they're our most efficient blender. Like Rat Ogres just hurt themselves too much for my taste.
Yeah.
They just die to everything. But Storm Vermin, you can get hit by some chip damage and then still be very effective because they're 3 attacks per model. In a unit of 20, they just vaporize basically everything they touch. Like I played against my buddy who was running Seraphon, and we were just like wanted to try out melee stuff, and I was running Vizzik plus 60 Storm Vermin, and I think I tabled him by bottom of 2. Like I was just cleaving through everything he had with the +1 rend and the double fights, and I had a unit of Storm Vermin like be locked up with his unit of Saurus Guard for basically the whole game because his Saurus Guard were debuffed to all hell, and my Storm Vermin just couldn't get through the 3-up 5-up.
Wow, that makes sense. Jim said earlier, I thought I was the Skaven fan who would buy any plastic kit they made. This book broke me of that. The rules are just that bad. Yeah, on some of them, on some of the units, I agree. Like I was, like the hard part for me with the warp grinder though is like I had 2 of them in metal. You know what I mean? I'm gonna buy it eventually. Like I'm just gonna paint it at some point. You know, but yeah, this book broke me of that too. I am gonna buy. Like I've got some storm vermin, but I think I want more because eventually I think they will probably be a very compelling unit. And I think the new models are completely insane. Why did they hurt our buddy the Master Molder? He wasn't hurting anyone. Like what did he do wrong? Like
I'll tell you what I think it is. I think they nerfed him because they were worried about Thanquol's mutated menagerie being too strong.
oh, interesting, right? Because then it's on this war scroll. But like it's not, and they should have known that because it's actually not good at all. Interesting. Yeah, maybe I think you're right, and that sucks. Like if that's the case, then get rid of Thanquol's stupid menagerie and like, because like it's not like he was great before. He was just like he was okay. Like he was healing guys, you know, if he's within range. And now the other problem too is that like his charge ability is just like +1 and you got to be in combat. Like how are you even accomplishing that? You know what I mean? He's running like you
sad.
skitter leap him over there to get this stupid terrible buff. Anyway, yeah, it's too bad. Hell Pit is, you know, it's like I think it's the main thing I will say about it is that it's not worse than the Brood Terror.
No, it's definitely better than the Brood Terror. It's actually got a great war scroll in my opinion. It's just way too expensive. That's all. Like it's supposed to be a cheap fragile glass cannon monster, and you're not getting that at 270. Like
Right.
if it was 200, it'd be great, but 270 is ridiculous when you can like no. No, just no.
I think it has a very good war scroll. The main problem I think I have with it right now is that it has the companion keyword on its attacks. So if you're running it in Molder, which is where it belongs, you have an equal chance of hurting it as getting anything at all. So like that whole middle bracket like doesn't apply to it. And it's got 13 like lower quality attacks. So +1 attack, like who even cares? Like just give it 14 attacks. You know what I mean? On a 3-up. Like, what are we even doing here? Like, it kind of annoys me more than anything. Like, I know it's not like really affecting it that much. It's mostly just annoying me. But yeah, I mean, it has a lot of cool stuff. I'm kind of sad what they did with the Avalanche of Flesh. But you know, if you give this thing a 5-up ward and then it also has 2 horrible to die, it can be a right pain in the ass. The problem is that's mostly never going to happen. You know.
Tangent moment for me, and I'm sure that Carson will agree with me too, but I think that Companion was a mistake. I think that it is an unfair over nerf to an archetype that's already nerfed in this edition. And already, generally, monster units are hurt by the fact that they hit on 4s and hurt by the fact that there are a low number of attacks with high damage. So buffs like +1 to hit and +1 attack are already less effective on them than they are on a brick of 20 guys with 2 attacks each that are damage 2 or something like that. So I feel like Companion is just a completely unnecessary over nerf of monsters in the game right now.
Yeah,
I
I
would
agree
like to.
with that. I think they were just too liberal with their like giving out of the companion keyword, just because I think
It's not a
there's plenty of things-
companion.
That's fair. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's plenty of things that like it makes sense. It's like, why does your horse benefit from the general telling you to fight better, right? Like that doesn't make any sense. But for other things where you have like dragons, for instance, like why is that a companion? Or like why is that worse? So I think it should have just been like a more restrictive keyword limited to things that were like truly supposed to be terrible attacks.
Right.
So it's weird. I don't understand it either.
I'm sad that I didn't get a chance to say screw Carson. I agree with you, but you got it in there first. You win this time. The rat ogres, we kind of already talked about them. We didn't mention that they do have a shooting attack, but they're not scryer. So you only take them. Well, they're only like getting something from menagerie. Yeah, I don't know. We kind of already covered it. I think they're a little too expensive for what they are. And if they do bring them down, I would like to try them in Molder. I'd like to give them another shot. I've got a really cool conversion I'm working on for my next 6. So, yeah. The Brood Terror is like 50-50. Is it the worst, or is the Warp Grinder the worst unit in the book? At least the Brood Terror looks cool. I don't know.
I don't think so. I think the Brood Terror has a War Scroll that's actually decent. I think it has some things going for it. The Rampage is very strong, and the shooting attack is fine. In my opinion, what this guy he has a role that's actually very good, which is that he stands behind infantry and makes them a lot more durable, and then shoots, and then maybe gets brought into combat and gets some attacks through because you're clever with positioning. But he's definitely not doing that at 300 points. Like, I think he has a compelling War Scroll that I would play if he goes down 80 or 90 points.
Right. And what's interesting about him too, by the way, is that he does benefit from the Molder +1 attack. Which is weird because I guess he's got the little guy. Is that the idea? He's got a guy controlling him?
Yeah. He's kind of like a Storm Fiend is the idea. He's got like a secondary brain that's making him smarter. So the +1 attack goes a little bit farther on him because he's got 2 weapon profiles. He's not really, I don't think he's really like that all amazing in combat, even with +1 attack. He's just kind of mediocre. But -1 to hit is like super, super strong. And -1 to hit on a 2-up is really, really good.
-1 to hit.
I think it's worth paying points for.
I agree with that. I'm totally in agreement. And when I say like the worst in the book, I'm talking about his points combined with 300 points. He's
the most overcosted.
Yeah, it's like not even on the table, which sucks. I actually told Carson when this book was coming out that like I think I'm gonna paint him first. I was like, I'm really excited for Molder, and I was like, oh man, this is gonna be so great. He's got a cool War Scroll, and then the points came out, and I was just like, oh, they broke my heart. Yeah, like they just.
I just built mine too.
Oh, did you? Yeah, I was gonna build him first and paint him first. And that's why I was working on all those rat ogres ahead of time. And yeah, it broke my heart. But now I've got, so I've got some, I haven't had a lot of painting time, but I just finished another unit of 20 of the new clan rats. So yeah, and I'm working on some weapons teams. Cool. Okay. Deathmaster. He's interesting, but why the F is he 70 points?
160, I think. He needs to be 40 points cheaper.
What on earth? Like, he's got a cool combo you can do with the Deceiver, but you're not paying 160 points for that? Like, are they out of their damn mind? It's crazy. Yeah, okay.
Definitely, there's something there though, like run and shoot with a bunch of Night Runners and a Deceiver. Like there is a world where you pay 1,000 points for Eshin, like 1,000 points of Eshin troops, and play a Deathmaster. It definitely exists. He's definitely like his War Scroll is usable, but yeah, he's too expensive. You're right. You just don't play him at that points cost.
I mean, and like speaking of Night Runners, like Eshin's my favorite clan. Why didn't they give us some new models for the Night Runners? That's the craziest. That's the most baffling decision. Like 300 points for the Brood Terror. Okay, we all have brain farts. I get it. But like that, as dumb as 300 points for the Brood Terror is, not getting resculpts for like one of the coolest units in the book is so completely insane to me. Ninja Rats is such like a low-hanging fruit. It's on the ground. Just bend over and pick it up. I actually wanted more new Eshin units. I'm hoping that this means, though, that we're getting like a resculpt, like a second wave at some point in the future. or like a Warcry warband or something like the skink chameleon skinks were for Seraphon.
Mhm.
Even though those came out first. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, no, totally agree. I think we're all on the same page. Yeah. Yeah, I should collect all 3 of them. Yeah, and the Deceiver is like from like what, 7th edition or something. Well, it actually brings us to the endless spells. We already talked about these. Is there anything we want to add?
No, I think the spells are fine.
Yeah.
And they're definitely playable. I think, like I said earlier, I think other lores may be better, but our lore is definitely playable and decent.
Yep, I agree. And it's thematic and fun and cool. We talked about the Gnawholes. And then, okay, now we've got the only other things to talk about are the armies of renown. I don't think any of them are good, but why don't we go over them and talk about them?
I think Vizzik is terrible. I think Vizzik is really, really bad, and there's like no reason to ever run it. I don't even know. I don't think we even need to talk about it. I think it's god awful. Because it's all about infantry, and you don't even get our Gnawholes, so you can't bring infantry back, and you don't get any of our best infantry buffs in it. It's just, I don't think there's any redeeming qualities here. But I think Thanquol's Mutated Menagerie is.
Okay.
I think I understand why all of our monsters are overpointed, because I think it's very close to being very good. Because
interesting.
I think there's a world where I actually think that there's a teams list that could exist where you run Thanquol and 18 Storm Fiends, and it just gut checks a lot of armies because they just simply cannot kill the Storm Fiends, because it's a unit of 6 Storm Fiends with the Thanquol's Mutated Menagerie buff is like 48 wounds on a 5-up ward.
Yeah, that's crazy. But like, okay, first of all, let's explain what's in there, just in case people don't know. Like, a lot of people they tune in just to find out what things are and what they do to a certain extent. So, and I'm sorry if I didn't. Feel free to at me in the comments, like if I'm not seeing something that should be seen. I'm really enjoying myself, though. Obviously, this is the Skaven book we're talking about. Okay, so Thanquol's Mutated Menagerie. Roster options, and what this means is these are the only things that you're allowed to take in the book. So you get Thanquol, of course, because it's Thanquol's Mutated Menagerie. You get the Master Molder. You can take Rat Ogres. You can take Hell Pit Abomination, Brood Terror, Storm Fiends, and you cannot include Regiments of Renown or Faction Terrain, which is really painful for us, obviously. Okay, now the passive is, while a friendly Thanquol is within the combat range of another friendly Mutated Menagerie unit, that Thanquol, like there's more than one, has a 4-up ward. Each time you make a successful ward roll, for Thanquol, allocate 1 damage point to a friendly Mutated Menagerie unit within its combat range after the damage sequence has resolved. So basically, you get Verminous Valor from Skaven 2.0 onward. And then Spiteful Swarms, I'll go with that next. Pick a friendly once per turn, any combat phase, pick a friendly non-hero Mutated Menagerie monster that has not used any rampage abilities this turn to use this ability. This unit has strike first for the rest of the turn. However, at the end of the turn, this unit is destroyed. When this unit is destroyed, before it is removed from play, roll a dice for each enemy unit within 6 inches. On a 3-up, subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of that enemy unit's melee weapons for the rest of the battle. After this ability has been resolved, this unit cannot use any other rampage abilities, blah, 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 blah. So basically, you send in a monster, it attacks first, and then it dies. And on a 3-up, reduces the attack characteristic. Should we go in steps here? What do you think about that?
It's fine. I think it's fine. Like, it's strike. If your monster, it's about to die, like, you can pop this and get some free damage out of it, and then maybe get a long-lasting effect out of it too. It's not bad, but it's nothing too crazy. It's definitely not the reason you would play Thanquol's Mutated Menagerie.
Okay. Carson, anything to add? Cool.
No, I pretty much agree.
Yeah, I think I do too. More and more mutation. once per turn army your hero phase. Pick a friendly non-hero mutated menagerie unit. You cannot pick the same unit to be the target of this ability more than once per battle. For the rest of the battle, add 2 inches or add 2 to the target's health characteristic, which is, we'll go over this in a second. Add 2 inches to the target's move characteristic. By the way, this does not say or. It just says do all of these things. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons. The target has a 5-up ward. And at the end of each turn, allocate 2 plus D3 damage points to the target. This is why you're taking this this army, really. Because your Storm Fiends become 8 health each. They become 8-inch move. And they go, up to 4 or 5 attacks depending on what else is going on. Obviously, you're rolling for mutated menagerie in addition to this, but and then you get the 5-up ward for them anyway. So you get the 2 benefits from that. But then at the end, of course, you're taking potentially up to 5 damage per thing. Yeah, it's very strong. Keegan, what do you? I'm sure you have lots to say about this.
So it turns Storm Fiends from 36 wounds to 48 wounds for a reinforced unit. So 48 wounds on a 4-up, 5-up is monstrously difficult to remove for most armies. Just like imagine an army with Thanquol and 18 Storm Fiends. That's like 160 plus wounds. Once you get all these buffs off, you get 1 per battle round. 160 wounds on a 4-up, 5-up that does insane damage and moves 8 inches. You're basically at that point almost 9 hot. Like it's really, really strong. And there is a lot of armies in the game that simply will not be able to get through that much beef because, especially with Storm Fiends, they have the 3 different weapon profiles, and 2 of the Fiends have a bad melee profile and a shooting attack. So that means that each Storm Fiend unit can essentially take like 16 damage on a 4-up, 5-up before their melee actually starts to drop off. So this with Storm Fiends specifically, I don't think this buff is nowhere near as good on Rat Ogres or the 2 monsters. Like it's fine on Rat Ogres, but on Storm Fiends specifically, it is really, really strong. And I definitely think there's a teams list where you run 18 Storm Fiends and Thanquol, and you just put this buff on a unit of Storm Fiends each turn, and then just say, "Hey, opponent, can you deal with this?" It's kind of like a 12 Varangard list. It's just, it's a list check. So I think it's really strong in teams potentially, not probably very good at a GT.
Like in a take all comers kind of. Yeah. I like the idea of like, cause like I agree with what you're saying in its entirety. I do think that there is an argument for maybe taking Rat Ogres depending on their points, you know what I mean, in the future, because they are getting more of a percentage increase in their health because they go from 4 each to 6 each, and if depending on how many points they are, of course you can only ever go up to 6, so there's kind of like a maximum amount, and you're only doing this once per phase, and I'm aware of all that, but the other thing is that like it might allow you to add a master molder in here, and then you're taking D3 plus 2 damage, but you're healing 3 as well. And so you could do that in whatever order you want. You know what I mean? Like if they haven't taken any damage, then they take the damage first, and then you add it back on. and then if you don't want to lose one, and you're hoping not to lose something, you heal them and then you take damage or whatever, right? I love the idea of this, and it's kind of a shame because like I don't want to see that many Storm Fiends on the table, but I agree with you. I think that's just the right way to run it. Carson, I saw you calculating and doing things. Did you want to add something?
Oh, I was
Okay.
like I I agree with what Keegan's saying. Like sometimes it can just be really hard to move. One thing to note is that Pat asked in the chat, allocate 2 plus D3 wounds. That means you can save the 5 up ward. No, you cannot, because allocate is after ward
Right.
saves. Yeah,
That's,
it would say
yeah.
deal D3 plus 2 damage to it, or mortal damage or something. But this is just flat out subtracting from its health.
It is.
Not that that's a huge deal, but it's worth noting.
That's a big deal. No, and thank you for pointing that out, Pat. Actually, that's a good point, because like that's something that a lot of people will skip over. Because we're used to being able to actually do that before now. Is it usually did apply? So that's a great catch. Thank you to Carson and Pat. And then we should bring up that there is one more ability here. Any combat phase rampaging demise. Pick a friendly non-hero mutated menagerie monster that has not used any rampage abilities this turn to use this ability. Also, by the way, these are rampages, so you can't do like your what's it called, avalanche of flesh or whatever, and then use these as well, because it says rampage abilities. Anyway, this unit has strike first for the rest of the turn. However, at the end of the turn, this unit is destroyed. When this unit is destroyed, before it is removed from play, roll a D3 for each enemy unit. So basically, you can just splash out mortal wounds in a bubble when it dies. I just thought I should bring that up. I guess I could see doing that if it was going to be particularly effective. But if you're going to do one of these abilities, like you said, I think it's mostly defensive. It's like, yeah, my hell pit's on 2 wounds. You know what I mean? Like, it's better than it just dying. At least it gets to swing and then die, and maybe it does something extra. So it makes it kind of interesting. I can kind of see just taking like a hell pit or a brood terror, assuming that they become not crapola at some point, just for this kind of ability. You know what I mean? Just to kind of swing before it dies, and then maybe -1 from the attacks of like something like trolls or something like that. Like that could be devastating to their output, because they're very high quality attacks. No, I love what everyone's saying. And then I guess we'll quickly go over, they've got 1 heroic trait, pick up to 2 friendly non-hero mutated menagerie units within 13 inches. The targets can each use all-out attack or all-out defense, even if the command has already been used by a friendly unit. This is like, who else has this? There's this somewhere else in
Warbringer.
The Warbringer, that's what it is. The problem is you're already CP starved, and yeah, it kind of sucks. Yeah. Like,
this is also once per battle.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
that's
not
crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's going on a stupid little, what do you call it anyway? Like a little Master Molder, assuming you even have one. Like, you might not even like have access to a heroic trait if you're running Keegan's list of like just a crap ton of Storm Fiends. And then anyway, it also has Artifact of Power, Warpstone Innards, which is, the name is amazing. Pick a friendly non-hero mutated menagerie unit, monster unit wholly within 13 inches. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the battle. However, at the end of each turn, allocate D3 damage points to the target. Okay,
And even do it on a hell pit. It has to be a brood terror.
Oh yeah, I skipped over the monster thing again. Ugh, that's crazy.
Yep.
Oh
Criminal.
Man, that's criminal, and it's once per anyway. And then the spell lore, so you don't have access to Skaven normal prayer or spells rather, but you do have access to untapped mutation. Pick a friendly mutated menagerie wizard to cast this spell, which is only Thanquol, by the way. that's the only one who can do it. Pick up to 3 visible friendly mutated menagerie units wholly within 13 inches, and they are affected by the more mutation ability to be the targets. Then make a casting roll of 2d6. You need a 5 up. For each damage point allocated to the target at the end of this turn by the more mutation ability, add 1 to the target's control score. This is a weird kind of ability.
Yeah, it's really weird in my opinion. Not amazing.
Yeah. And then you can, and by the way, there is a manifestation lore for this. You only get access to the summon warp lightning vortex. What the hell? Like, why did you pick the worst one? Like, of all of them to pick, I even like Vermintide. I would have been like, fine, that's
Well,
fine.
what's comedy too is Bell of Doom would actually be like amazing in this army because Storm
Absolutely.
Fiends with -1 to be wounded with how durable they already are from the mutation buff, like
Yeah.
Bell of Doom would be super strong, which is probably why they didn't put it in there. They were like, we're worried about this one being really strong, so we're going to give them the worst endless spell.
Exactly. And I mean, like, that's what I'm saying though, is like, I get Bell of Doom. I get why they were like, okay, maybe this is like we can't, we're clearly not very good at really figuring out when stuff's going to be broken. You know what I mean? Like Nighthaunt or whatever. So we're just going to play it on the safe side. But like the Vermintide, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with Vermintide, and it heals at the end of each turn. So it's very like thematic as well with Molder. I don't know, man. I don't know what to do with them sometimes. That's the last thing. Okay. What's that?
OGW.
Oh, G dubs. Can't live with you. And you don't take my emails. So,
I see Matt Beasley asked in the chat, what makes them good damage now? I assume he's referring to Storm Fiends. I ran the math on them, and 6 Storm Fiends with +1 attack and +1 to hit do about 32 damage to a 4-up save. So, there you go. Pretty good damage.
yep, that's excellent. And then you're just running 2 warp grinders to get maximum usage out of that.
Yep.
Yeah. Are you running shot gauntlets on that?
I was doing Doomflayer gauntlets because they just Ren 2. It's like they're just because they have 1 more attack and Ren 2. I just find they're overall more consistent.
Yep.
Shot gauntlets can randomly spike really high, but I think you're
Oh, can they?
sacrificing a lot by only running Ren 2 or Ren 1 with shot gauntlets.
Right. I know that like, you know, and I didn't actually run the math myself, but like I said earlier, yeah, versus on the charge versus not on the charge. Apparently it depends on which one is better, but yeah, I really do. Yeah, 2. He says, yeah, 2 times 0 damage is still 0. And then he added,
I mean, we can agree to disagree, I guess. I think 30 is a little more than 0.
That is more than 0. I can confirm. I've run the math myself, and it is 0. It is more than 0. It's more than the highest number, which is 24 as well. So, okay. So thoughts overall on the book? Keegan, go. What are your, you know,
in my opinion, we best win by playing the objective game and running away a lot and utilizing our combat tricks and our mobility to deny battle tactics and outscore our opponents. I think you're very rarely going to win by tabling your opponent. Most of your games are going to go to turn 5, and it's always going to be close. I've played probably 100+ games with Skaven in 4th edition, and the biggest win I've gotten was like in terms of like differential scoring was like 15-5. Like I've never obliterated my opponent, and I've never been obliterated. I think the lowest I've ever scored with Skaven in all the games that I played was maybe 25 or something like that. So like we just, that's how we play right now. We keep it close, we score very well, we win small, we lose small. We're a decent team's army because of that. But in terms of like going to single GTs, right now it's probably just going to be rattling spam for the time being. Rattling spam with Thanquol and maybe the Deceiver. Like my buddy Zach, he just went 5-0 at a GT last weekend, and he ran 12 rattling guns, Deceiver, Thanquol, Arch Warlock, 40 Clan Rats, and 10 Night Runners, I believe was the list. And he beat like Trolls, Khorne, Nurgle, a bunch of really durable armies.
How many people were in the GT?
It was Vault Wars. I think it was 40 something.
Oh, pretty good. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, like 40 something. I was there. It was, it's not like a super big GT. It's the Midwest, so
No, I mean, no, that's I'm just asking because, like, you know what I mean? It's like yeah, my buddy went 5-0, and it's like, how many people were there? Well, there was 12 people there, and you know what I mean? And
no,
it's just like, okay,
I think it was a
but
40.
like
I think it was
40
a
is
little
very
over 40.
respectable. No, that's great. That's awesome. I mean, it's certainly doable. I think, yeah, Rattlings are definitely kind of the way to do it right now. It's the easiest way to do it. We'll have to kind of see what happens when they eventually, change some points around. But yeah, I'm curious. I really like the book. I feel the same way about this book that I did about them in 3.0. I'm kind of excited, and they're the main army that I want to play. Obviously, they're my favorite army. Like, I'm obsessed. I have a problem. Yeah, I've got shot glasses. I've got a Skaven wallet, like sweaters, like you name it. It's like the Skaven are the reason I got back into wargaming 8 years ago, over 8 years ago now, and they're my one true love. And what's nice is that they're my favorite army to play in this edition. There are some really drastic internal balance issues, and some feels bads, not to mention the stuff that, like, they didn't really change much, and that's just kind of, it is what it is. We're the first, we kind of always knew that this was going to be what it was when we're the first book with Stormcast. But yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm loving painting them, and we've got some big plans on the channel regarding some content coming that I can't announce yet, but we're all like really excited for it, and yeah. So, and Carson, any final thoughts?
I think the Skaven book is interesting. I'm really
Shut
interested
up!
to see where it. Okay. I'm really interested to see where it shakes out, or how it shakes out rather, after the internal balance hopefully gets adjusted a little bit. But I liked what you said, Keegan, about how it makes it an interesting teams list where it's like it has a pretty high floor as far as scoring goes if someone plays quite safely. And I think that most of the time where someone is going to get blown out as Skaven is where they start to do like the super aggressive tactics where it's just not going to work, right? You have to kind of let your opponent come to you for sure. And that's definitely a play style. It's not mine, but it's actually, that's not true. I do that quite a bit, but but I respect it. Like, it's an interesting archetype of army to have in the game, instead of just every army runs at each other and whoever has the best stats wins, right?
Yeah, Skaven is definitely not. If you're after good stats, I would not play our army. We're very difficult to play, and we don't have a lot of units that are just like juiced stats through the roof.
I find it hilarious that both of the starter set armies are like not simple to play whatsoever. Like, Skaven is Skaven is not simple by any means whatsoever. And I think that Stormcast like appears simple from the outside, but like in order to actually pilot them well, it's not simple either.
Yeah,
there's a lot of moving pieces in that army.
I almost forgot to get my Street Fighter reference in, but Stormcast should be the Ryu. That is to say, like the basic where you start. You know what I mean? Like, it should be the best, like, learner army, because that's where most people are going to enter the game, is with Stormcast. But another thing to mention is Jim Skaven says, you did not talk about the biggest crime, no ratgat on the Storm Vermin. Jim, I love you, but I'm going to have to disagree, and here's why. Okay? And I don't know what Keegan's going to say either. Okay? But if they gave us an actual profile on those Storm Vermin, I was terrified that they were going to give us a profile on the Storm Vermin. Because if they had given us a one-shot gun that hits on 4s and wounds on 5s, it would have added like 10 points to the models. I guarantee it. And whatever they added to it, it wasn't going to be worth it. I agree that it's whack that he exists with no profile, but we can't trust GW to point a stupid gun like that. Just talk to the Fire Slayers. What do you guys think? I mean, I'm just being real. It's a low blow, but they're short. Like, what else am I going to do? Right?
Two.
Keegan, you're supposed to be on my side. You're a rat, not a dwarf. There are enemies.
I'm supposed to be against you. This is Skaven.
No, but we're supposed to be like, at least as it appears, on the same side, right? Or are you just doing the Skaven mental?
Tokens.
Yeah, that I can do. We're also good at mental gymnastics. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Really love. Thank you so much for coming on, Keegan. It was wonderful to have you. You don't play any other armies, right?
I sometimes play ogres. I collect them a little bit. And I'm looking forward to their Battletome.
Cool. Hopefully a refresh too. Well, like maybe we can have you back when like Skaven gets some points adjustments or something like that. It would be great. If you guys haven't followed him already, Mechrat AOS on YouTube. Look him up. I can't remember. I don't think we said this on the air, but apparently the only other Mechrat has got like 4 shorts. Carson was saying, and he's like picking up. What was it? He was picking up something on like on the road with chopsticks.
It's just 4 shorts with 0 views, and he's just picking up cashews with chopsticks. And that's all of them. That's the whole channel.
The craziest thing
So
ever.
random.
Honestly, I feel like I gotta like go and not subscribe to him. I'm not insane, but just like give those videos a view. Just throw him a freaking bone. But you're not throwing your subscription away for Mechrat on AOS. Keegan, thank you so much for coming. It was a real pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
It was so fun.
Yeah, it was great. Next week we are doing the Stormcast because Stormcast don't really matter, so we're just going to go right into their review. I don't really care. I'm just kidding. We're having Stark Pister on, player extraordinaire, really strong player. I'm actually looking forward to it because I'm looking forward to learning. Because I won't like buy the book and I'm not going to like do my own research. So the great thing is we'll just have him come on and just tell me everything I need to know. Right, Carson? Awesome. Okay. Thank you for that in-depth reply. Thanks everyone again for watching. Yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Bye.